你試下呢度都會㗎。
我梗係啦，我印咗好多，有印咗。因為我影印咯，我見到好似我有啲驚唔係好夠，係啊，我拎出去先。
大哥你 OK 啊嘛？OK 啊。我到時做啲嘢好好 serious 嘅，兩部機一齊撳。如果佢萬一二制佢呢個 screen 嘅 freeze 或者動漫咁咧，真係成 backup 咁。好啊，都冇晒啦。咁你今晚要去邊啊？
今晚冇咩搞，翻屋企。
你住咁近？
係啊。
喺 exactly 呢度隔離啊嘛。
搭車都係5、6分鐘㗎。
有冇幫到你？
冇嘢幫到。冇嘢可以幫到。
唔差喎，係啊，10幾蚊直播去邊啊？
咩啊？後邊咯 ，Stephen。係啊 ，Hello Stephen。呢個係我哋同事阿 James 啊。呢個就係阿 James。
冇嘢。小問題。
因為我哋
OK，我知。
係啊，多謝。
尋日都打風咁正常嘅，係咯。
佢好幫手嘅，因為一開頭我唔支持佢，因為就係因為真係風暴嗰啲。
係啊。
真係大家
係啊，呢個冇辦法。佢都喺 group 入邊都有話，即係可唔可以online？應該都歡迎。
去攞啲大彩。
冇啊，我覺得我轉頭企喺嗰邊。係。OK， 冇順利嘅，係咯。
即係等你直播。
係啊，
我就
哦。直播就冇得 cut 㗎啦，
冇得 cut 㗎。
係咯，咁後面其實先華片片應該都係佢哋去搞嘅話，就可以同佢哋講翻聲先。
即係總之有關於佢哋啲嘢就講。
OK， 明解。冇問題。
真嗰陣因為我哋都喺嗰度嘅，即係我哋今日成日都應該翻船，有啲咩需要
好啊。好啊，冇問題。好，冇問題。
好，冇問題。
阿 Jo
好。
28分。
係我哋去35分開始啦。
我哋
即係
褪5分鐘。
35跟住40。
但佢我哋
45跟住 Jo 55分走嘛，啱啱好咯。我哋最多去到。
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, welcome to Web3 Connect, Hong Kong and the world. I am Bobo from Cyberport Web3 team, also your MC for today's event. On behalf of Hong Kong Cyberport, it's my pleasure to kick off this influential gathering where we will navigate the evolving landscape of digital assets and stablecoin regulations in Hong Kong and the world. Together, we will explore how policy trends are shaping the future of Web3 and positioning Hong Kong as a leader in this space. To officially open our event, I'm honored to introduce Ms. Georgina Chiu, Chief Corporate Development Officer of Cyberport, to deliver our welcoming remarks. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Georgina Chiu to the stage.
Honorable Undersecretary Joseph Chan, Duncan Chiu, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, congratulations. You make food a super typhoon. And good afternoon. Welcome to Web3 Connect, Hong Kong and the world. We gather here today at the CyberArena, a beacon of innovation and collaboration to delve into the flourishing world of Web3 technology and digital asset. Today, we are super fortunate to be joined by a remarkable group of speakers who are at the forefront of regulatory and technological investment in the Web3 space. Our keynote speaker, Ms. Emily Parker, with a wealth of experience and global perspective, will illuminate the regulatory intricacy that shape our industry. We're also honored to have Mr. Joseph Chan, whose leadership is pivotal for Hong Kong's digital finance development. And let us also extend our warm welcome to the Honorable Duncan Chiu, whose expertise in the intersection of technology and policy will be invaluable. Cyberport, as a flagship for digital technology and entrepreneurship, has been instrumental in supporting the development of Web3 companies. With the substantial funding from the Hong Kong SL government, Cyberport has initiated various programs to accelerate the growth of Web3 industry. The Web3 Hub at Cyberport was established in 2023. Since then, we have over 260 Web3 companies in Cyberport, fostering innovation and application across key areas such as fintech, smart living, digital entertainment, and beyond. The project Ensemble, launched by the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, with our active participation and that of our startups, is fostering asset and money tokenization, unlocking new investment opportunities in the Web3 domain. And also, the Web3 Investor Circle was also set up, bring together the investors and entrepreneurs, stimulating funding and collaboration. Additionally, the Web3 Academy and the Cyberport University Partnership Program are cultivating the next generation of Web3 professionals, ensuring a steady supply of skilled talent in the future. This initiative demonstrates our dedication to positioning Hong Kong as a global hub for Web3 technologies and digital assets. By offering essential infrastructure, funding, and talent development, Cyberport is empowering the success of entrepreneurs and business. And this event is not merely a stage for industry leaders to impart the knowledge, but also an occasion to elevate the public awareness and facilitate knowledge sharing on the pivotal topic that will shape the future of digital finance. By assembling experts and stakeholders, we aim to reinforce Hong Kong's status as a leading Web3 hub, drawing talent and investment into a vibrant ecosystem. Ladies and gentlemen, it is also crucial to acknowledge the fact that AI has the transformative influence on the evolution of Web3. The fusion of AI has not only enhanced the efficiency and scalability of blockchain network, but also pioneered the development of smart contracts, decentralized applications that are more intelligent. AI's capacity to process and analyze vast amount of data is instrumental in enhancing the security and user experience in Web3 platform. Alongside with our effort in Web3, Cyberport is also making substantial progress in the realm of AI. Through the partnership with major tech firms such as iFly Tech, Cisco, Baidu, and Huawei, we are advancing research, innovation, and the application of AI across sectors. The establishment of AI Supercomputing Center exemplifies our commitment to propelling Hong Kong's innovation and tech sector, with first facility set to commence operation this year. By nurturing both AI and Web3 ecosystem, Cyberport is enabling a new wave of technological innovation that is shaping our industry and generating economic value. The synergy of those technologies is not only driving growth, but also ensuring Hong Kong's tech landscape remains dynamic and future-oriented. As we draw to close, let us celebrate the potential of AI and Web3. Let us embrace the collaborative and innovative spirits that define the Web3 community. Together, we can unlock the new potential and propel the expansion of a digital economy that's both inclusive and robust. Thank you so much for making here today. I'm eagerly anticipating the enlightening discussion and insight that lie ahead. Enjoy the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Georgina Chiu. It is my honor to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Joseph Chan, JP, Undersecretary of Financial Service and the Treasury Bureau. Mr. Chan to deliver an opening speech. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Mr. Joseph Chan.
Georgina, Duncan, Forrest, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is my great pleasure to be here with you today at this highly anticipated event, Web3 Connect, Hong Kong and the World, hosted by Cyberport and its Web3 Hub. This event gathers some of the most influential leaders and visionaries in the Web3 space to delve into the latest trends and opportunities that are shaping the future of Web3 here in Hong Kong and beyond. Hong Kong enjoys a distinctive blend of advantages under the one country, two systems. On one hand, our core strengths include free flow of capital, free flow of information, a robust common law system, and a simple and low tax regime. On the other hand, Hong Kong enjoys preferential access to mainland China, the world's second largest economy, currently growing at about 5%. These dual advantages position Hong Kong as a super connector between China and international markets, between the East and the West. Building on this strong foundation, Hong Kong has already established ourselves as Asia's leading international financial center. Indeed, we consistently topped various league tables in Asia across issuance of Asian international bonds, cross-border wealth management business, insurance density, the scale of hedge fund, the size of our offshore renminbi liquidity pool, etc. These are not just rankings. They are a testament to our robust financial ecosystem, which sets the stage for Hong Kong to continue as a leader in the realm of Web3 as well. Most of the financial institutions set up their Asia's regional headquarters or the largest regional presence here in Hong Kong. So Web3 companies here can enjoy tremendous access to potential clients, potential investors, and potential business partners here, making Hong Kong an ideal place for Web3 companies to start up and scale up. Recognizing that innovation requires a supportive and forward-thinking environment, 2 years ago, we issued a policy statement on the development of virtual assets in Hong Kong, which outlined our vision and policy direction. Since then, under the same activity, same risk, same rule principle, the government and our financial regulators have worked to create a supportive environment to include timely and necessary guardrails to mitigate actual and potential risks for the long-term development of fintech and Web3 in Hong Kong. Our philosophy is very clear. We firmly believe that encouraging financial innovation is only possible through providing a transparent, certain, and predictable regulatory environment. A significant milestone in our journey was the introduction of the licensing regime for virtual asset exchanges in June last year. Then earlier this year, we completed public consultations on the regulatory frameworks for both over-the-counter trading of virtual assets and stablecoins. Then in March this year, we took another important step by introducing a stablecoin sandbox to further refine our approach. During the 2-month consultation on stablecoin, we received over 100 submissions from various stakeholders and market participants. The consensus was very clear. With the growing prominence of virtual assets, it is crucial to establish a regulatory framework for fiat-referenced stablecoin issuers. This framework is crucial for managing potential monetary and financial stability risks while ensuring transparent and appropriate safeguards. The proposed regulatory requirements were broadly supported, with some valuable suggestions for further enhancements. Our proposed regulatory framework mandates that fiat-referenced stablecoin issuers meet several key requirements. These include being a Hong Kong incorporated entity, registering and operating within Hong Kong, having senior management personnel based in Hong Kong, and maintaining 100% reserve assets, ensuring that all circulating stablecoins are fully backed by equivalent reserves. These regulations are designed to protect stablecoin issuers and promote the stable, healthy development of the market. We are currently finalizing the necessary preparations, and we aim at submitting the draft legislation on stablecoins to the Legislative Council by the end of this year. The stablecoin sandbox, introduced in March, has already gathered significant interest from the industry. The HKMA has received inquiries from a dozen of institutions, and in July this year, HKMA announced the first batch of 3 participants admitted to the sandbox. The participants may now test their proposed business models within the limited scope as specified by the HKMA, and further engage with the HKMA on future compliance with the proposed regulatory framework. As a leading international financial center, Hong Kong is uniquely positioned to bridge virtual assets with traditional financial instruments. Since December 2022, virtual asset futures ETFs have been listed and traded on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Then in April this year, we welcomed the listing of Asia's first spot virtual asset ETFs in Hong Kong, further diversifying the range of products available in our markets. Indeed, that marked a significant milestone, the first time a virtual asset spot ETF product has been launched in the Asian market, reaffirming Hong Kong's leadership in the development of virtual assets across the region. The government has also led by example, taking a proactive approach in promoting tokenization. 2 years ago, the Hong Kong SR government already issued our own NFT to demonstrate our openness and commitment to Web3. Last year, the Hong Kong SR government became the first government in the world to issue tokenized government green bonds, setting a global precedent. Subsequently, we launched a second tokenized green bonds in February this year. We are also actively engaging with market participants to explore additional applications of distributed ledger technology in the capital markets, aiming to enhance the efficiency, transparency, and cost effectiveness of securities issuance and trading. Ladies and gentlemen, the initiatives and regulatory advancements we have discussed just now are laying the groundwork for the next wave of opportunities in Hong Kong Web3 development. I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Cyberport and its Web3 Hub as host, and also HKITJC and Foresight Ventures as co-hosts for organizing today's events. I wish you all a productive and inspiring exchange of ideas today. Let us continue to seize the next big opportunities in the Web3 journey together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph Chan. Before we move to our next session, we would like to capture this moment with a group photo. I kindly invite our event host, co-host, keynote speakers to join on stage for a brief photo-taking session. Please may I invite Mr. Joseph Chan JP, Ms. Georgina Chiu, Honorable Duncan Chiu, and Mr. Forrest Bai to come to the stage for a photo. Please remain at the stage. Please may I also invite our keynote speaker, Ms. Emily Parker, to come to the stage for a photo. Please remain at the stage. Please may I invite all panelists and speakers, also Mr. Jack Kong, Board of Director of Hong Kong Cyberport, and Mr. Johnny Chan, Chief Investment Officer, to come to the stage. Also, to invite a Cyberport Web3 team, Ms. Rachel Lee and Mr. James Lee. Thank you. Thank you all for your patience during our photo session. We are now moved to our keynotes. It's my honor to introduce our distinguished guest, the Honorable Duncan Chiu, President of HKITJC and member of the Legislative Council. Please join me in welcoming Honorable Duncan Chiu to the stage.
Thank you. Joseph, Georgina, Forrest, Emily, the guests, thank you for joining us on a Saturday afternoon. I regret that we have a lot more applicants, but due to the typhoon, we have to reschedule to a Saturday afternoon. So that's a proof that the attendance today that you must be really interested in learning about stablecoin, or you got nothing to do on weekends. So, thanks for joining, but that's a good process for us to filter, these are the, focus group that, if we want to work on anything on stablecoin, this should be the core team. So thanks for joining us. And And thanks for all the speakers. A lot of speakers, they come in, flew in for this event. So that's why we can only defer it for one day. Otherwise, we can postpone to a different date. But the purpose, of representing Hong Kong ITJC, which is a nonprofit association in Hong Kong, as the president, I think we're really glad that we can partner with Cyberport, with all the esteemed speakers, and also with many industry participants for joining this event, because we believe that Web3 is definitely a very important development for Hong Kong in terms of sustaining our financial hub positions in Asia and also globally. We all know that technology and finance is converging. This is an unstoppable trend. With the technology progressing and advancing, we see in electronic payments, which is traditional payment methods or bank leveraging technology. And then about more than 10 years ago, we see that technology is producing what do you call product or financial products, things like crypto or Bitcoin, and then we have NFTs and stuff. That the convergence of technology and finance has actually come into the birth of the next stage of financial product. So this is really important for us, Hong Kong as an international financial center, to keep our innovative and supportive to these new development of the technology or financial and technology, fintech development. So I'm really glad that since 2022, as Joseph mentioned, it's only less than 2 years. It's actually, we count is 22 months until today, 21 months, that we already have the legislation regime for the virtual asset service provider, the platform exchange. And then we now into the stablecoin discussions where we have free sandbox provider already. And we all know that, as people interested in stablecoin, that is a very important gateway between fiat world and, and the digital world. So how do we establish the stablecoin regime is particularly important. And of course, we have next on the table, we have the VA OTC, which is under consultation. So if, for any developed country, or city like Hong Kong, in 3 years' time, wrap up all the legislation work for these new advancing regime in terms of providing a Web3, providing a welcoming ground for Web3 to develop. I think 3 years is, I wouldn't say slow. It's actually a very good progress, and especially we will have some discussions and Legislative Council. I could not say, how long it take, but hopefully if we can wrap it up in 3 years for any developed government, I think that's a very honorable process. So next, I look forward to all these, new discussions that we're going to have. I have to thank our speakers today, and I have to say sorry for Teddy. He is supposed to come representing JD as one of the sandbox participants, but since the change of day, he wouldn't be able to join us at panel. And then we have our other two sandbox petitioners. So we look forward to the discussions we're going to have at the panel a bit later, and share some thoughts on the development and ideas of how Hong Kong's stablecoin development regime should be. And thank you for Joseph for all the supports in the whole development of the Web3 movement, and providing a lot of the guideline to the industries on how the government feel the next step should be. So we look forward to a close discussion between stakeholders, between the industries, between our legislators like us, and also the government departments, so that we can move on, professionally on our establishment of the Web3 regime. Thank you again for attending on a Saturday afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Duncan Chiu. We now turn our attention to an insightful exploration of the Web3 landscape. I am pleased to introduce Mr. Forrest Bai, co-founder of Foresight Ventures. Mr. Bai will share his perspective on exploring challenges and opportunity in building a global Web3 supply chain network in Hong Kong. Please welcome Mr. Forrest Bai to the stage.
今天很荣幸能够来参加由这个数码港还有这个香港的政府组织的这场活动。So my English is not very good, so I want to perform better. So I will use my speak with Chinese. Yeah. 所以然后也很荣幸能够跟这个Joseph、Duncan and Emily 一起同台去做一些分享。对，我应该对。这个是我的准备了一个演讲稿，因为我觉得无论是 Foresight 本身还是香港，都有它非常特殊的一个位置，就是作为一个 hub 或者作为一个 bridge 去 connect 西方世界和东方世界。所以我在想，其实 Web3 跟传统的行业其实也很类似，这个里面是有全球的这个分工的。所以说，作为我们一家 VC 的一个视角，所以说我们可能会去从这个供应链去分工的角度去阐述我们对这个行业的一些理解，或者说我们的一些思考。首先呢，我先介绍一下 Foresight Ventures。我们是一家连接东西方的一家 VC， 而且我觉得我们可能在这个市场里面是唯一的一家，因为我们有很多的 resources， 并且我们在很多地方都有我们的 office 和我们的员工。我们应该整个 group 加在一起有超过100个人。然后呢，我们的 position 呢，就是说我们是一家研究驱动的，因为我觉得只有研究才能够创造价值。然后我们在新加坡，还有包括在纽约都有我们的办公室。我们跟其他的 venture firm 可能还有一些区别，就是说我们其实不仅仅是一家财务的 VC， 我们其实拥有很多的资源，包括我们其实有4家媒体公司。我们有 The Block， 这个是英文最大的 crypto media， 然后我们还有 Foresight News， 是中文最大的 crypto media， 然后 Block Temple 是台湾最大的 ，CoinList 应该是在韩国应该也是前3的一家媒体。所以说我们不是说去帮助我们的投资项目去 connect 资源，我们本身就是这些资源的拥有者。当然除此之外，我们其实也具备全行业几乎所有的分工的资源。然后我们的 mission 呢，就是说，作为一家 VC， 我们的使命就是说，我们去大胆的投资最具备破坏性的创新。然后我们也希望能够帮助这些创业者去获得成功，成为第1名。对。然后在下一页之前呢，其实我还想补充一下，就是说，我觉得这一轮 Web3 的行业跟之前有什么区别？我觉得现在就在于一个我们的渗透率已经超过了1个亿的人口使用 Web3， 所以在1个亿到达10个亿的这个 adoption 的这个路径中啊，我觉得我们可能需要更多关心的就是我们能不能够服务于真实的用户、日常的用户，能够创造一些真实的使用场景和 utility 给他们，而不是说还在停留在一些想象啊、idea、narrative 之中。我们需要更多的关心真实的需求。然后下一页呢？对，这个就是可能这个主题想讲的，就是说我们以生产一个 MacBook 为例的话，其实美国比如说它也会，美国、亚洲都会有不同的分工。美国的话可能说是设计、品牌这些具有高附加值的一些部分，然后往下日韩它可能会有一些生产显示器、存储器、内存相对而言比较高精尖的一些设备，然后中国大陆的话可能就是一些电池，然后显示器最近也不错，然后呢外壳一些部件的生产和组装，然后台湾的话可能就是芯片的生产，因为有台积电，所以说其实可以很明确的看到有一些全球的分工在里面。那 Web3 的话，我觉得其实现在也比较接近哈，就是说美国可能说它强在叙事、品牌和融资，中国的话我们有很多的开发者，我们有巨大的市场，统一的大市场，还有这些交易所，因为交易所的老板基本上都是中国人，对吧？所以我们在里面还是有些话语权。韩国的话，他们的交易的社区非常活跃。东南亚的话，就是有很多游戏玩家。南美的话，其实也有些从高到低的开发者的社区，然后他们非常需要支付，所以 crypto 支付在南美也非常的发达。所以我想说的就是说，相比于我在传统行业的经验，因为我在传统行业也做自然管理和投资，其实 Web3 的投资 ，Web3 的行业更加的国际化。因为很明显，哪怕是一个融资2000万美金的一个项目，其实并不大，但是你看到它的无论是团队还是投资人还是它的用户，基本上都是全球各地都有的。 所以说这个是很不一样一点。所以说作为 Foresight， 我们为什么要在海外有员工，要在海外收购媒体，海外设立办公室，就是为了去更好的去连接这些节点。对，然后下一页的话是就是我个人的这个理解啊，可能也不是特别准确，因为我觉得香港有它独特的战略地位，也就是为什么其实像现在越来越多的从业者，包括我在内，花了更多的时间来到香港啊，因为香港在传统它就是一个全球金融中心和一个非常大的一个港口，所以说在 Web3 我去类比或者说去 connection， 香港是拥有非常好的一个地理和行业位置。那它的优势有哪些？香港有最好的大学，而且创业攻坚的支持，比如说 Web3 Port 数码港 Cyberport， 对吧？数码港，这个其实在很多地方都没有。说大家还愿意去给这些 Web3 的创业者提供一个好的一个落地的一个支持。然后本地企业其实也有非常雄厚的资金。然后监管方面也越来越开放和透明，因为我们也有 OSL 啊、HashKey 啊各种各样的这个 ETF 交易所牌照、稳定币牌照，其实都是在世界的前列的，比其他的地区可能说更加友好、快速落地一些啊。然后还有一个对于创业很重要的就是说，它可能能够依靠大陆的人才和供应链的储备，比如说能够很好的从杭州、深圳去获得这些开发者的资源，他们只需要坐火车半个小时、4个小时就可以到了啊。他甚至可以每天都来。那供应链的话，比如说我们无论是做类似于 DeepIn 的东西，还是说一些物理设备的东西，深圳都有全球最好的一个供应链。然后，因为我是基本上会是一个 nomad， 我可能每年可能2-3个月在美国，2-3个月在新加坡，1-2个月在香港，还有其他欧洲的一些地方去待，所以我会觉得拥有一个很好的一个 visa 的一个条件，对于 Web3 的创业者其实是非常重要的、非常特别的。因为 Web3 的创业者基本上都是全球各地在跑，对。然后我觉得挑战的话，当然这个挑战我想了半天，只想到一个，就是说目前为止 Web3 的本地的这个基础还是比较弱。这个来自于其实就是积累，因为毕竟香港开放 Web3 可能时间也相对而偏短，但是我相信有一些前提的优势摆在这里，所以我们很快的能够弥补这些之前的一些积累的一些薄弱吧。对，对，下一页是，对，然后我可能是虽然说不是政府的人员，但是我可能很希望就是说，因为感受到了港府对我们的一个支持，所以我可能这里面觉得提出了一些建议吧。因为我觉得创业其实就是围绕3要素，一个是资金，一个是人才，一个是市场。市场的话其实本身就不缺，我们拥有全世界最大的统一大市场。对，然后可能就是无论是像我们这样的从业者，或者说是港府，希望能够大力的去引进人才。我们比如很简单就可以从深圳、杭州、上海去吸引人才。然后也希望能够加强本地资金对 Web3 创业的支持。我今天也听 Thomas 说，他们每年其实都已经拨了很多钱在 Web3， 但是呢，希望钱可以更多一点啊，多多益善。然后从开发者的角度，因为不管怎么样，我们不能去拔苗助长，所以我觉得开发者人才、开发者社区或者说教育的这种积累，可能是一个长期的过程。我们可能需要非常踏实的、脚踏实地去做这样一个事情，慢慢积累我们的人才储备。人才够了，那我相信什么事都可以做好。对。然后我觉得，当然，倒数第2点就是继续推动国际合作伙伴来到香港，包括今天也感到 Emily 能够来我们这样一个活动。然后 Foresight 本身也是收购了 The Block， 我们在8月份也请了 The Block 的团队来到香港。然后4月份的 Web3 Festival 也是很多国外的朋友来到这边。我觉得大家对于香港必须要让他过来看一看，他才会真正的去理解香港，并且一旦他回到他自己，比如说美国、欧洲，他会帮助我们去传播香港到底有多么的优势，对不对？然后我也最后一点就是说，从创业的角度或者说我们生产的角度，我觉得现在应该是去发现一些真实的 utility use case， 去帮助10亿用户进入到我们这个 Web3 的空间里面去。而且这样一个东西，可能说香港没有10亿人，但是呢，我们可以依靠香港这部分精英群体、核心的创业资源，去撬动全球的人来到香港，去发挥我们 Web3 的这个行业的价值。 对，基本上这些就是我的一些分享吧，谢谢大家。
Thank you, Mr. Forrest Bai. I'm delighted to introduce Ms. Emily Parker, a distinguished author and advisor to the GBBC, with a background at the U.S. State Department and the Wall Street Journal. Ms. Emily Parker brings a wealth of experience to her analysis of global regulatory trends in digital assets. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Emily Parker to the stage.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for coming on a Saturday. I have to say that when we had to move this event because of a typhoon warning, and then Cyberport and Duncan and everybody was able to put this together in one day, that shows that Hong Kong is actually really innovative, because I did not think this event was going to happen. So really, really well done. Okay, let's get started. So today I'm going to talk about what I see as some of the more interesting trends in the U.S. and Asia. In the U.S. and Asia, excuse me. I don't know why that. Okay, sorry. I'm going to talk about. Sorry about that. I'm going to talk about what I see as the most interesting trends in 2024 across the U.S. and Asia. And this is what I see as some of the three main themes. The first I call crypto-friendly versus crypto-easy, which I will explain in a moment. The second, which is a very interesting and very new trend, which is crypto becoming a US presidential election issue, which I will also talk about in more detail. And the third is the importance of Asia, specifically here in Hong Kong. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, crypto-friendly is not crypto-easy. Let's talk about what that means. So I talk about this a lot because I think there is often a misunderstanding about what this idea of crypto-friendly really means. We often hear this word used to describe jurisdictions like Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan. You know, these places are so crypto-friendly. Everybody should go there and do crypto business. And I think to a degree, yes, these jurisdictions are welcoming to the crypto industry, but the word crypto-friendly is misleading because it gives the impression that it's easy to do business in these places. And actually, the so-called crypto-friendly jurisdictions, and I put Hong Kong in that category, have some of the toughest requirements in the world. And by the way, that's not a bad thing at all, but I just think it's important to know the terms that we are talking about. I think a better term or a more accurate term would be crypto clear, which means regulatory clarity. I think what places like Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan, Dubai have in common is not necessarily friendliness, it's relative regulatory clarity. And I think jurisdictions with that clarity will win over the long term if winning means attracting more crypto talent to the region. Okay, next please. All right, let's get into this because this is kind of interesting. So crypto becoming a US election issue. This is the first time we've seen crypto become a US election issue at this scale. And what I mean by that is we are seeing major presidential candidates discussing crypto publicly and passionately for the first time. And right now, obviously, we have Kamala Harris, we have Donald Trump, but even before that, we had various candidates mentioning crypto as an important part of their agenda. So why is this happening? I think there's a few theories. One, as you can see, there's some statistics that there's a relatively large number of crypto investors and traders in the United States. That's part of it. I personally do not think that's the reason. I think that there are some people that will go to the polls in November and vote for the candidate that is more supportive of crypto, but I think more people will not be doing that because there are so many issues in the United States. I just don't think there's that many people that are voting specifically on crypto primarily. So I think it has more to do with fundraising, and we're already seeing that fundraising from major crypto industry players is playing a role, you know, in specifically congressional elections. So I think that's part of it. So what are the candidates actually saying? So Trump has said a lot about crypto. He made a big speech in Nashville. One of the things he said is pledging to make the US a crypto capital in the world. I think that that resonates in the United States because some people realize that the US, or believe that the US may fall behind if we don't have better regulatory clarity. So I think there were some people who believe that argument. There was talk of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Not everybody really likes that idea, but some people do. Trump also said he would get rid of Gary Gensler, who's a very controversial chairman of the SEC. But one thing that I want to point out here is that we don't necessarily know the position of the Harris campaign on crypto, but I don't think we should think of crypto as a party issue, as a partisan issue. At least I don't think that it should be. And in fact, there are several very high-profile Democratic politicians who are also promoting the industry. Most recently, we had Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer saying we all believe in the future of crypto, saying legislation will come by this year, by the end of this year. So I don't think it should be split on party lines. One other point I want to mention here, because I think this is really interesting, is that central bank digital currencies, for example, digital dollar, have become a presidential election talking point. And actually, this is kind of interesting because before, this was like a really small issue that nobody was really talking about because unlike China, for example, the US is not really rolling out a digital dollar. There are no immediate plans to launch a digital dollar. So why are Republican candidates talking about banning it? They've been talking about banning a digital dollar. And I think there probably needs to be a little bit more education on this point because I think there's sort of an idea that A, there's going to be one soon, which I don't think there is, and B, that this is going to be used for the government to control how people spend money, which I also don't think is the purpose. So this is interesting, but this has become an increasingly prominent theme during the election. Okay, next, please. Okay, so I use this slide to point out why cryptocurrency regulation in the United States is controversial. So this is, by the way, this is just like a select number of cases. These are some of the more well-known SEC cases against various players in the crypto industry. And all these cases are different. I'm not going to talk about whether they're right or wrong, but I think the reason why this is controversial is because the SEC is often criticized for what's called regulation by enforcement. And regulation by enforcement, what that means is that instead of having a clear and comprehensive crypto regime in the beginning, what happens is the SEC goes after projects later. You know, so what the crypto industry says, what they complain about is like, wouldn't it be better to just have the rules in the beginning rather than just like find out we broke the rules and then get sued? And the thing about this slide that's important is that you know, if you're a big player like Coinbase or Ripple, you're going to have the money to like spend years in a lawsuit. But for smaller projects, that's actually can destroy you. And I think, you know, that's why this is a lot of projects in the United States are just living under the shadow of potentially a lawsuit. And so this is something that, you know, many people are talking about. There needs to be greater clarification. And what are the areas for clarification? Well, the main one is what is a security and what is not a security. Everyone in the US is still arguing about this. So because the US often uses something called the Howey test, which is kind of like interpretive, right? So there's different interpretations of what is a security. Gary Gensler thinks most crypto assets are securities, but many people don't think that. And the other thing that the cryptocurrency industry says is that even if they wanted to register as a security, register tokens as a security, they couldn't because the definitions of a security and a crypto asset are just too far away, and so there's no path. So this has been an ongoing controversy. The other controversy in the United States is who's regulating crypto? Is it the SEC? Is it the CFTC? Is it someone else? And then the other thing that makes things complicated is that different states have different regulations. So we don't have a lot of nationwide regulation. There's a lot of different state-by-state regulation, and that can be a little bit confusing. Okay, next slide. All right, so let's talk about Asia. So I'm going to go through now. I can't go through all of Asia today because we'd be here for a really long time. And I just want to mention, I want to give a shout out to Southeast Asia, like Vietnam, Thailand, super important markets. I'm not getting into them today, but I acknowledge that they are super important. I'm just talking about the 4 jurisdictions I know the best, which is Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan, and Korea. And I do want to mention China, or the Chinese Web3 community briefly, because it's super important. So as we all know, as you all know, there's a lot of restrictions on cryptocurrency in mainland China, but the global Chinese Web3 community is super, super important. You know, these are, and I think we heard this a little bit in the last presentation, these are developers, these are entrepreneurs, these are traders, these are, I mean, this is just a massively important community, and they're all over the world. And I just think, you know, I always tell people if they're starting a project, I say, make sure you pay attention to the Chinese Web3 community, because they can really decide the fate of a project. And I also think this is an obvious advantage for a place like Hong Kong. Okay, next. All right, let's talk about Hong Kong. Now, Hong Kong, I'm not going to talk too much about Hong Kong because I feel kind of ridiculous lecturing all of you about Hong Kong since you are in Hong Kong and know this really well. So I just want to talk about like some very top level things that I've observed about Hong Kong. So the first one is that Hong Kong should get a ton of credit for having comprehensive virtual asset regulations. This is kind of what I was saying before, like a lot of places don't have this. So Hong Kong has like a really comprehensive framework that's pretty clear, at least on principle, and that's a really big deal. So Hong Kong deserves a lot of credit for that. Same thing, licensing, a very clear licensing regime for crypto exchanges. But this comes back to my earlier point about crypto-friendly does not mean crypto easy, because Hong Kong is tough, as you all know. It is tough to launch an exchange in Hong Kong. Right now, there's pretty much 2 licensed exchanges. Hong Kong has the highest cold storage requirement that I personally know of. There might be others, but 98% is really high. Very strict rules on custody. I know that there's some controversy now in Hong Kong about the custody rules because exchanges basically have to do it themselves, and I know there's conversations being had about if that's too strict or not. And then compliance costs can be very high, right? You have to pay a lot for lawyers and compliance. So, you know, this is something that I think Hong Kong is still working out. But again, there's really interesting things happening here, like the sandbox for stablecoin issuers, which we're going to get into on a later panel. And also Hong Kong being one of the first movers for Bitcoin and Ether ETFs. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so Singapore is another really interesting case that I think gets really misunderstood. So Singapore is commonly referred to as crypto-friendly. That's like the main one that I always hear talked about as crypto-friendly. Singapore, at least the Singapore government, they don't really like crypto. Like, they don't like it. Like, they like digital asset tokenization. They like blockchain technology. They like all sorts of like futuristic Web3 stuff, but they don't like cryptocurrency. And just, you can see in their own comments, right? I mean, these are comments from the MAS. Yes to digital asset innovation, no to cryptocurrency speculation. Cryptocurrencies have failed the test of digital money. Like, these are not pro-crypto statements. So I just think this is a really important thing to make this distinction, because again, if you're going to Singapore because it's like crypto-friendly, you'd probably be a little disappointed. You know, for example, there's restrictions on advertising in public places. So I just think that distinction is important. However, Singapore is super friendly and innovative on things like tokenization, you know, asset tokenization. Every time I go to Singapore, I'm very impressed by just how kind of like futuristic the government is in terms of just regulating crypto and regulating virtual assets and coming up with like really interesting and new proposals. So next slide. So this is just one example. This is something that came out of the Monetary Authority of Singapore. They're leading it in collaboration with some of these big institutions listed here. So this is called Global Layer 1. And what is this? This is basically a proposal for a new blockchain infrastructure for financial institutions. And this is really interesting because here's the problem that they're trying to solve. Like, as all of you know, like real world assets, asset tokenization, this is really hot right now. Everyone's talking about RWA. And so you have all these big banks and financial institutions that are trying to get into the game, right? They have their own blockchains. But the problem is, now we have too many blockchains. There's too many blockchains. They're all doing different things. They're not interoperable necessarily, and what that causes is fragmentation of liquidity. So basically, in a funny way, the popularity of blockchain and RWA is actually undermining the problem that blockchain is supposed to solve, because blockchain technology, in theory, is supposed to be like simple and streamlined and everything's in one place. Now there's just like all these blockchains doing different things. So this is an attempt to address that problem, and by having a common financial infrastructure. But going back to what I said about Singapore not liking crypto, like, this is not about Bitcoin or Ethereum or anything like that. This is about regulated tokenized assets. So Bitcoin as you know, like was invented to kind of like replace the existing financial system. That's not at all what Singapore is doing. They're not replacing anything. They're trying to kind of upgrade the existing financial system and make it easier for financial institutions to kind of work together. Anyway, we don't know yet if this is going to happen. The next steps are like the nonprofit organization, but I just think this is a good example of Singapore at an official level coming up with something, I don't know, kind of cool and interesting. Okay, next please. All right, Japan. I could talk about Japan all day. I obviously will not, but I could. Just because I spend a lot of time in Japan. I think it's one of the most interesting places in the world when it comes to crypto, and very little is known about it. So Japan was a very early mover. They were very early on, establishing Bitcoin as a form of payment, but they also suffered very early. There was the huge hack of Mt. Gox, there was the hack of CoinCheck, and so for a few years, Japan basically shut down. Like Japan basically had very little crypto activity. This was around 2018, but what they were doing was putting regulations in place to prevent the next hack. And so when FTX collapsed, Japan was one of the few places, FTX Japan was one of the few places that gave users their money back. The reason for this is because Japan early had segregation of assets. Some of the things that Hong Kong has now, segregation of assets, and also very high cold wallet storage requirement. So Japan is tough, but that toughness has paid off. Japan also is different from Singapore in the sense that Japan doesn't make that distinction, like we like blockchain, but we don't like crypto. We like tokens, but we don't like crypto. They actually kind of are promoting crypto, which is interesting. And you have a few officials promoting it. You have a few politicians in the leading liberal Democratic Party who are very pro-crypto, pro-Web3. Japan has also done a lot of things that I think people aren't that aware of. For example, being one of the first major economies to have comprehensive stablecoin regulations. This is like a huge deal. And then also things like clarifying the legal status of DAOs. I don't know any other country that's done that. Wyoming has done that in the United States, but in Japan, like a DAO can be registered as an LLC. That's a pretty big deal for a nation to do. So I think these are things that people just don't know about, but are really interesting. So the question that I always ask is like, okay, if Japan is so ahead on crypto, why aren't more people going there? Why aren't we seeing more Japanese crypto projects? I think the answer is pretty simple. I think it's taxes. I think that's why. Taxes on crypto can go up to 55% in Japan. Imagine, like, if you're competing with Hong Kong and Singapore, that's no competition, right? I mean, nobody wants to pay 55% of taxes on crypto. Right now, the crypto industry is really fighting that and trying to bring it down closer to 20%. It will take a long time, I think, but maybe it will happen. So I think that's a big obstacle still for Japan. There's no Bitcoin spot ETF yet in Japan. And actually, interesting footnote here. Some people in the crypto industry in Japan don't want a Bitcoin ETF. Why? Because of the tax structure. So if there was a Bitcoin spot ETF, it would be taxed more like stocks, which is way lower than going through a crypto exchange. So if you brought in a spot ETF in this environment, it would be a really unfair competition with the rest of the crypto industry. So I think they need to solve this tax issue before bringing in Bitcoin ETFs. Okay, next. So this is, okay, we're talking about stablecoins. I think Japan is a really useful model for Hong Kong or for anybody, that just because you can see some of the things that worked and some of the things that maybe haven't worked as well. The stablecoin law took effect last year, but there's still no real stablecoins in Japan. So there's some lessons there. Part of it is that it just takes time. So part of it's normal. But part of it is that we're hitting some tensions. So here, one that I hear often has to do with this rule for JPY, Japanese yen stablecoins, which is that basically they have to keep the legal currency backing the stablecoins, not only in Japan, but there's rules about how it can be invested. I think the purpose of this is because they don't want them investing in all sorts of crazy, weird things, but basically they can only invest it in bank deposits inside Japan. But the problem is that Japan has super low interest rates. So that means that there's no real business model or no way for these stablecoin issuers to make money. And I'm hearing about this again and again, and there's, again, proposals to change this. The other thing is that, as you can see, according to the law, banks are allowed to issue stablecoins. But in reality, there seems to be some regulatory hesitation about banks issuing non-KYC or permissionless stablecoins. The other thing that's interesting about Japan, and I think we can get into this here in Hong Kong too, is like questions about use cases. So the thing about Japan is that until this stablecoin law happened, stablecoins were essentially banned in Japan. So Japan is going from zero. And Japan kind of got used to life without stablecoins. Like, you know, their cash is really big in Japan. There's a lot of digital payment options. So I think one of the questions that's arising is like, what do we need stablecoins for and what will they be used for? And just questions, and I think this is a global question, but I hear it a lot in Japan specifically. Okay, next. All right, Korea. I didn't get to go to Korean Blockchain Week. I'm sure some of you did, but I still think Korea is super, super interesting. We heard a little bit about this in the last presentation. So Korea is a major retail market. And this is kind of what I was just saying about the Chinese community. It's like, if you get Korean retail traders behind you, you're in a really good position because they are very, very powerful. I can tell you that there's been times when I was sitting in New York and I would see a token just like shoot up and there was no clear reason. And then I looked on the Korean exchanges and I was like, oh, that's why. Because this is a really powerful, passionate group of people. This chart just illustrates that, just looking at how like Korean traders can influence the global trade volume of certain tokens. And you can see, A, that they really like altcoins, and B, they like small cap altcoins. And I just want to give a shout out here to Dspread that made this chart and sent it to me for this presentation. They do really great research in Korea, so if you ever want more Korean research, you should look them up. Okay, next. Okay, so Korea on the regulatory side, though, is definitely a little bit more complicated. I don't think anybody's really calling Korea crypto-friendly per se, despite the retail enthusiasm that I just mentioned. So one of the reasons is that, as you know, Terra Luna, this was founded by Do Kwon, who is a Korean national, and there were a lot of Korean investors in Terra Luna, and it was really hot in Korea. And then it exploded in a really big way, and a lot of Korean investors got hurt. And I think that had a very chilling effect on crypto regulation in Korea. I think people are kind of getting over it, like they're moving on now, but it definitely had an effect. I think regulators were very freaked out by Terra Luna. So if you look at Korea now, it's also very, very strict. There's a lot of limits on what the exchanges can do. So Upbit is the dominant exchange by a lot, but there's a lot you can't do, like no leverage, margin, future trading. And for that reason, you see a lot of Korean traders actually on overseas exchanges because they can do more things. There were new rules, Korean regulations, that took place very recently in July. These regulations are really about investor protection. They're not really about like promotion of the industry. They're more about like protecting investors. So again, some people inside the Korean industry say, we wish that this was a little bit more promoting. I think we might see that in another round, but right now it's targeting market manipulation and unfair trading practices, some unique things to Korea about, for example, collecting deposits on fiat that is invested in exchanges or held in exchanges. Crypto taxation has been delayed. This is also interesting. This goes back to my point. I think because in Korea as well, crypto can become an election issue. Like, because retail traders are so passionate about crypto that if you have a candidate being like, hey, I'm going to introduce crypto taxes, it's like not a good look for an election. So I think there's concern, at least among the political class, about not looking like you're anti-crypto. And then the other problem with Korea is that, you know, you have something that's called shadow regulation. So even though it's not officially written into the law, there's just certain things that people know that you can't do. For example, it's not easy for corporations to open accounts on crypto exchanges. But that said, I think, you know, this is all work in progress. I think we're going to see more regulation coming out of Korea, but very important market. And anyway, next slide. Anyway, that's all. Thank you very much. Any questions, please come find me. And yeah, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you, Ms. Emily Parker. Next, we will have an insightful panel discussion on stablecoin and their impact on the digital economy. Please may I invite our panelists, Ms. Rita Liu, CEO of RD Technologies, Mr. Dominic Maffei, Head of Digital Assets and FinTech Hong Kong of Standard Chartered, and Mr. Milton Lam, Product Lead of Stablecoin of Animoca Brands, all participants in the Hong Kong MA Stablecoin Sandbox to come to the stage. The discussion will be moderated by the Honorable Duncan Chiu and Ms. Emily Parker. Please join me in welcoming our esteemed panelists and moderators to the stage.
Mary says hi, by the way. She told me to say hello to you. Very good. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
According to the background.
Hi, welcome everyone. I am so excited about this session. This is really unusual session because I think there's a lot of interest in stablecoins in Hong Kong and specifically the stablecoin sandbox. So it's just so great to hear from you all directly and just hear a little bit about what you're actually doing. So.
Yeah, maybe why don't we kick off with we let the panel speakers to share a bit on maybe what you're working on and what you view as the stablecoin market in Hong Kong. Maybe we start with Rita.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Hi, I'm Rita from RD Technologies. So we are basically running actually a group of businesses. The RD stablecoin is just one of them. We also run a payment business called RD Wallet. So we were very excited to be among the first batch of companies to be admitted into the sandbox. The company was founded in 2021 by a group of well-known investors and Norman Chan, actually with a mission to build a stablecoin to sort of bridge Web 2 and 3 and to strengthen Hong Kong's position as a global financial hub and build Hong Kong into a global Web3 hub. I think my view is the three companies admitted into the sandbox in the first batch all represent probably different use cases. So for our group, we're very focused on payment because Hong Kong has traditionally been a global trading hub and a global financial hub and global payment hub. And in the group, we already have a fiat business that's facilitating payment flow, for global businesses. So that's also a SVF licensed business in Hong Kong. So we believe, as we speak, there's the percentage of global trade leveraging stablecoin is already going up as we speak, and it can only go up. Why? Because it solves the pain points, real world pain points in global cross-border payment, because it's expensive and opaque and slow. So we believe that's probably the biggest opportunity for stablecoin issued in Hong Kong. And payment, in our view, is always just a window. With payment, there will be financial needs, like in terms of, for example, yield generating needs and, investment needs for those flow. So that's sort of what we're doing. And yeah, very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Dominic?
Great. Hi, my name is Dominic from Standard Chartered Bank. I won't go into too much about Standard Chartered Bank. I guess we're a 160-year-old bank here in Hong Kong, note issuing bank. But what I think is interesting is the fact that the bank has been involved in digital assets and crypto since 2018. And our group strategy is that we believe that digital assets are here to stay. We believe that they are the next stage of financial market infrastructure. Not only tokenization of real world assets, we have a business focused on that, Libera, actually here in the room today. We launched a digital asset custodian business early on. We have a trading business in the space, but also crypto. We think crypto has a role to play. And stablecoins specifically are interesting in that I think right now they are the best tool we have that links traditional or TradFi or whatever you want to call it with Web3. We're also exploring, of course, tokenized deposits and CBDCs, but we think stablecoins have a very unique and interesting use case. We also believe that Hong Kong will be a digital asset hub. We do look to support that build out in Hong Kong. It's key to us as a bank, and it's key, we think, for this market to continue to be an international financial center. Our thinking, and this is thinking, we're in the sandbox still with our partners, one of them here today in Animoca, is that the hypothesis we have for our stablecoin is around the thought that, and I was going to say this, but obviously you guys fall into a different bracket, because I was going to say most people don't want to talk about how they pay for stuff, right? I mean, most people just want to pay for stuff. You don't want a niche use case. I don't want to open up my phone and have 15 different ways to pay for things. If you go and talk about payment tech at a dinner party, you will be by yourself. Trust me, I've experienced this. But you guys obviously are interested because you're here on a Saturday at Cyberport to talk about this. But again, I think we don't fall into the norm. So our view is that what is truly powerful is a stable coin that bridges multiple use cases. Our kind of working name is UC, HKD for Universal Coin. And the way we think this works, and the reason why we have this consortium that we're working with on our initial thinking in the sandbox, is that the bank brings a number of institutional use cases, and Animoca brings a number of Web3 use cases. I won't steal Milton's thunder. And then Hong Kong Telecom has a number of interesting payments use cases. All of these have value, but I think when you bring them together, you get something that potentially is quite game-changing. So I'll hand over to Milton to go into a little more detail. Thanks.
Thanks again for inviting us. So this is Milton from Animoca Brands. We are a Cyberport-based company, so if you're also part of the Cyberport campus, you probably have heard of us. But just for context, Animoca Brands is a Web3 company that's based in Hong Kong. We have, I think, over 200 people right now based in our Hong Kong headquarters, engaging in a range of businesses. You know, we're usually known for our venture investment business with, I think, roughly over 500 portfolios company right now. But also we have a range of operating companies, subsidiaries in the gaming production, education content side. And additionally, we're developing more around, Web3 services and even areas that's more adjacent to traditional sector enterprise solutions. I think when it comes to stablecoin, and by the way, we're not a financial institutional services company in any ways. We're not a crypto exchange, so we're probably not a natural name that comes to mind when you think about, stablecoin, sandbox, or applying for license. I think this is very interesting and unique for us because, of the very mission-aligned partners that we're able to find, including Standard Chartered and also Hong Kong Telecom, where, to Dom's point, we have very complementary resources in the different areas that we're good at. And again, just resonating what Dom has alluded to, we kind of have observed quite a few iterations and different cycles and see how different versions of stablecoins have played out in the Web3 world. And for some reason, there's always this little gap where it seems like it's not really breaking into real-world use cases, breaking into institutional use cases, right? So our thesis, that Dom partly covered, but we're looking more from a Web3 ecosystem side, is that we really need to bring in the so-called more traditional institutions, enterprises that have a lot of channels and resources in other areas. And I think this is, again, probably two sides of the same coin, but we're looking more from a Web3 side and seeing how potentially we could build a ecosystem, because stablecoin usage or driving adoption, like a lot of things in the internet age, it's about network effect. So we believe this is something very interesting in that lens for us as a Web3 native company.
Great, and just for clarification here, so there are 3 stablecoin sandbox projects, and Rita is one, and you two are representing the second one, and JD is the third one, and they were supposed to come, but because of the typhoon confusion, they're not here. So just to be clear, we have one project, second project, and a third that's not present today. Yeah, thank you. That was really, so if I can just sum this up, like you say, Rita, your stablecoin project is focused mostly on payments, right? That's the main use case. And then for you, you're saying it's kind of a range of use cases, including Web3 specific. Is that the best way to kind of sum that up?
I think that would be, I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of the whole group, obviously, but I'd say that's probably the vision. The ambition of the group is exploring something that ultimately can be used beyond just a very specific use case. Because if you look into a wallet right now, I'm sure your dollar is good in a lot of different places, not only a specific case. I think this is a working thesis that the group is basing our work on, and potentially, you know, we'll need to see how it goes. But we think that's probably a direction that could potentially yield, you know, asymmetric upside. That's kind of how we think about it.
Yeah, Emily. So payment. I think it's not that we're just, you know, focused on payment as a use case. I think so when we say we think payment is a big opportunity, doesn't mean we're not going to touch crypto exchanges, you know, DeFi protocols, because, you know, to build a global network that powers a new way of, you know, like money movement, you need all these, you know, players to come together to build this ecosystem. So for me, exchanges is a use case, but it's also a channel. It's probably the most efficient channel in some jurisdictions for on-off ramp, right? So we'll have to get onto exchanges. We'll have to work with DeFi protocols to facilitate, for example, investment needs, you know, for our stablecoin holders. But, you know, I get the question, right? Like talking to investors, you know, partners, you know, like as a latecomer, why would people use your stablecoin, right? That's when I say, you know, I think Hong Kong has great opportunity as a, you know, with the position of, you know, a traditional global trading hub to facilitate, you know, payment as a use case, as a starting point, as a kickstart killer app for stablecoin issued in Hong Kong. So that's sort of, you know, just want to clarify that. Yeah.
So what about, I mean, I know RD's team, I know Norman's been working on it for years. You know, I think one of the main key feature of the company is actually building around having a stablecoin in Hong Kong. So what is, I mean, some audience might want to know, what is the importance of having a stablecoin and why, you know, what are the benefits having it issued in Hong Kong?
Yeah, I think it's the key theme here is compliant stablecoin, right? So we already have so many stablecoins coming out everywhere, and there are some, you know, first movers that are very strong, right? So when we talk to, you know, lots of Web2 companies, you know, that includes, you know, some trading companies, you know, like exporters, importers based in Hong Kong or in this region, or traditional payment companies based in this region. You know, they're pretty much waiting for a compliant stablecoin in this region, you know, recognized by regulator in Hong Kong. Why? Because, you know, with the compliant stablecoin, the off-ramping, on-ramping in Hong Kong will be much easier. And for them to have less concern about, you know, be involved with stablecoin. So that's actually, you know, what we have, you know, been, you know, that's pretty much the main theme here, that, you know, like why a compliant stablecoin issued in Hong Kong makes sense. But you know, where does the need come from? It goes back to the points I was making, is that Hong Kong traditionally has been a payment hub, and, you know, that's fueled by the trading volume is going from the biggest export market in the world, which is Greater China. The payment always go back to Hong Kong or Singapore to consolidate. So that's why there's so much payment flowing through Hong Kong. So that you know, like gives lot of you know, payment companies or exporter importers, with the stablecoin, they can have a, you know, cheaper and faster way to receive and make cross-border payment compared with traditional rails. So that's why, you know, I think this is a great opportunity for Hong Kong, you know, to issue a compliant stablecoin. Yeah.
Just one quick follow-up on that. I think that's a really great answer that clarifies a lot, because, yeah, why Hong Kong? Because it's compliant stablecoin. There are very few places in the world where you can do that. So I'm just curious, because it's really interesting. I mean, right now, biggest stablecoin, USDT, Tether, not particularly compliant, like nobody really knows what they're doing. So why, if you could just break down, you mentioned on-ramps and off-ramps being easier with a compliant stablecoin. Can you just break that down? Because that's a really important point. Like why does having compliance make it easier? And what do you mean by that exactly?
Yeah, so right now in Hong Kong, as you know, right, on licensed exchanges, existing stablecoins can only be offered to professional investors, not to the mass market, let's say. So, I mean, professional investors, the threshold is 8 million Hong Kong dollar. It's not very high, but it's still a hassle, right? So, so that's the main thing here, and I think that's the main point of why Hong Kong is is building this stablecoin regime, is to separate the onshore and offshore players, right? So I think that's a main thing here. Yeah. Thank you.
I just wanted to add to that. I thought it was, I mean, that's a very comprehensive answer. So yeah, good. That was good. But additionally, it's it's about having a compliant coin. But as we all know, it matters what you say, but it also sometimes matters who says it. So there are a lot of smaller island countries that have regulation for stablecoins, but it's much different when you have a established international financial center with battle-tested regulations, with huge trade flows, a trading, financial markets trading, capital markets trading center. Coming out with these type of regulations. It's very different. I think that when you take that into account, you take into account Hong Kong's kind of like super connector status. You take into account, the ecosystem here. I mean, there's talent, there's really good universities, there's people doing stuff like this, on Saturdays. And when you take all that into account, you have the opportunity to build out an ecosystem and an infrastructure that supports a coin that maybe becomes a big part of what the future stablecoin market looks like. Because right now, you mentioned Tether, obviously there's USDC, but the reality is that stablecoins are US dollar stablecoins right now. That's what they are. There's, of course, a ton of other ones that are being launched. UAE has a coin that's just being launched. We see them coming around the market, but still, from a market cap perspective, it's a dollar tool. Our view is that changes over time, but they have to come from regulatory regimes. They have to come from markets that have use cases. They have to come from places that have the skill and capability to support that, and the use cases that flow through that, like Rita mentioned. And I think Hong Kong has those attributes and that ability to take on that role.
So I want to jump in with the compliant stablecoin thing. I think, that's obvious, the demand coming for that, because a lot of the stablecoin issue now is used for global trades, and the fees, efficiencies, and everything. We can see that, and I think I can totally understand the the compliance angle and the trust angle in providing a new stablecoin. And actually, when we issue the consultation or inviting sandbox, I did raise in the Ledge Code meetings that where the Hong Kong MA is emphasizing on having a use case, very much on use case on the stablecoin. I thought I heard from other industry practitioners, not you guys, but people thinking about issuing that, having too much a use case issue would have framed actually the parameter of a stablecoin, or whether that will help as a Kickstarter for a stablecoin to actually getting a market in the beginning. So, I mean, that's that debate that, is broadly used for payment, or, you have to have a use case to Kickstarter. But I don't know, but you guys are, subscribing to it. So what do you think about the use case issue as a kickstart to the, stablecoin application?
Yeah, happy to start on this. I think currently, sorry, I guess just a quick response to Duncan's point around HMA's initial emphasis around having use cases. The way this group interpreted it, it's really HMA's intention is probably just wanting to see the applicant have put in thoughts in thinking around what the ecosystem, what their product offering would be, beyond just trying to issue just another stablecoin for pure trading purposes, right? Which leads to the current market landscape, which if you look at the total stablecoin market cap, a majority of it's being used in crypto trading as primary use cases, in particular USDT. But I think that's just the natural stage of how the industry evolved. If we think about, and I'm sure a lot of you are way earlier than that, but crypto trading volume actually jumped a lot when after USDT was invented. Like before that, it's actually a relatively muted trading volume. But with USDT, the crypto trading volume actually went up a lot since then. And I think what we're looking forward here is that a lot of institutions are subscribing to the idea or the benefits of having some form of Web3 or blockchain infrastructure incorporated into the operations. So not necessarily in a way of issuing crypto, right? It could be a back-end implementation, tokenized securities and stocks, but you do need the other side to exist for those to come in live. I think a bit analogous to how way back there's USDT and crypto trading, and you do need that trusted license and compliant rail to exist for all these different use cases that people have envisioned to come to life. Because one of the bigger benefits or value that people keep talking about, it's blockchain's ability to bring instant atomic settlement. We couldn't do it with FunSide, right? So it's again an off-the-cuff analogy, but if back then on an e-commerce platform you have a web page full of product catalog, but there's no way for you to transact and pay digitally. You actually need to pay physically at a store. Then that actually wouldn't work, right, in terms of driving the adoption. So I think the way we think about it is that while these different use cases, which our group collectively is exploring more, hopefully during the sandbox, they're more a segue to demonstrate that there are different ways to use it and that it could facilitate more things beyond just trading. I think that's kind of our perspective.
Yeah. Just one thing to add about compliance. I think like compliance does bring credibility and trustworthiness, but that's not only the reason why this is important. So because the backdrop of what's happening in the world is that the overall trajectory is everywhere. Every sector in crypto is getting more regulated. So every part of the ecosystem is getting more regulated. So that's why stablecoin is important, right? A stablecoin being compliant is important because like the players in the ecosystem that supports you is becoming more regulated. So we all know one of the stablecoins being offboarded in Europe among licensed exchanges, as we know, like earlier this year. So that's just the reality, right? So that's why compliance is important, for stablecoin, and it's great that Hong Kong is taking the leap of faith to be one of the first jurisdictions to to really regulate stablecoins. So that's why we're here are all very excited about this. And in terms of use case, yeah, we had extensive discussions with Hong Kong MA about this in the process of application to the sandbox. Sustainability of a business model for any license Hong Kong MA issues here is very important, right? Sustainability of the business model. But I do want to mention that I think what we're doing here, a compliant stablecoin to power, let's say, a new global network, payment network, or money movement network, is not something that easy, right? So it takes time. That's why I think like here, probably everyone here in the industry has a long-term view towards this. It's more, it's like how long did it take for Visa, MasterCard to build the network today? It's like probably over a century, right, almost. So I think so it's not like the quick pump and dump play like in crypto before anymore. So stablecoin is a different play here. Yeah. So I think it's a long-term play, and the use cases we mentioned here is going to take some time to play out. But I'm very confident about like what I mentioned about stablecoin being a very powerful tool to change the payment system we have today, especially given Hong Kong's position in global trade and global financial systems. Yeah, we're just at the beginning of that. Yeah.
Just one more question about the use case issue before we move on, because this is kind of a larger question. As I was just mentioning, in Japan, there's just questions about like what is the use case of stablecoins in general, right? And I think, given that, Milton brought up some interesting examples. I think one of the reasons for the rise of USDT was certain markets where, for example, you couldn't buy crypto with fiat, so it became a really useful on-ramp. Obviously, that's not super relevant here. Also, a big use case for stablecoins are in countries with like an unreliable currency. People use it as a store of value. Also not super relevant here in Hong Kong. So I guess my question is like, we can see why stablecoins add value, but why stablecoins and not something else? Like, why stablecoins and not, an octopus card? Why stablecoins and not, some other form of cross-border payment? Why not central bank digital currencies? Like, what is it specifically about stablecoins that has like a use case that's really necessary? In any of your view?
Well, I'll start. I think, again, it goes back to the ability for stablecoins to meet a bunch of these different needs. So yeah, CBDC can do, there's a bunch of CBDC can do. We're also looking at tokenized deposits. There's interesting use cases for that, of course. But if you think about stablecoins, you could use that for collateral, for trading. You could use that obviously to, we've already talked about payments, so obviously we know that's interesting in that regard. You could use it to back up the whole RWA space that we're talking about growing. Obviously that's a huge use case. Retail people can use this, right? A lot of the use cases we look at least internally when it comes to CBDC and tokenized deposits, they are very institutional focused. Well, this is a tool that can also be used for retail clients. And it is fiat. It's fiat. It's tokenized money. So to me, I think all these, why something else, it will probably be a lot of these things, right? I think it's not going to be one thing. It won't be only one tool. But this definitely has attributes that enable this to be quite an important tool in that toolbox. So.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Dominic on this. I think it's not, probably there's not a blanket answer to this question. I think you need to look at specific use cases in specific countries. Like for example, Japan, right? Emily, you mentioned that. Yeah, like in the retail use case, there's no need for stablecoin. There's already so many different types of digital payments. I would say it goes the same way for most Asian markets because the digital payment in the Web2 space is so developed, right? It's so convenient and so cheap to make payment for retail customers. So I think, yeah, you have to look at, use cases for specific use cases in specific countries to probably answer that question. And in terms of, for example, cross-border payment use case, why is a stablecoin not CBDC or tokenized deposit? In my view, ultimately, I think these three formats will coexist, and it works for different use cases, just like Dominic mentioned. But the advantage of stablecoin is the openness, right? So starting with payment, the other needs will rise, right? So, why someone want to hold your stablecoin? Because I can use the stablecoin to invest in DeFi protocol and get some return, because I can go to exchanges and buy some Bitcoin. So the openness only comes from stablecoin that can be issued on public chain, right? So we all know, the other types, CBDC and tokenized deposit, for different reasons, it's unlikely it can be issued on public chain, right? So probably, the reality is, why we have, two very successful stablecoin successful case out there, but not one very successful CBDC. So that's just the reality, right? So the openness of stablecoin, I think, to answer your question, Emily.
I wanted to add just one thing on the openness. I agree. I think the interesting thing about, obviously, public versus private blockchain is I think if you look in the future 10 years and you have a private blockchain versus a public blockchain infrastructure, there's about, 10, 15x amount of money and people focused on public blockchain. They're going to move ahead faster. They're going to develop quicker. There's going to be more opportunities, I believe, as opposed to these private blockchains, which will have more limited resources, will be more nascent, will not get network effect. So if you have a tool that runs on that public blockchain, in the future, there should be inherent benefits.
Thank you. Let's move on to
So-
the regulations, I guess.
Yeah, I think we have time for one more question. So getting back to, we talk about the use cases, compliance, stablecoin, what you guys are looking at. I think one thing is, we also announced the sandbox for the project Ensemble. So there's going to be more tokenized products. So that actually provide more connectivity between stablecoin and other digital assets in future. So this is what we are hoping for, a digital asset market in Hong Kong. And I mean, with that, what do you think about the connectivity between stablecoin in Hong Kong with these assets? Of course, is complement. But a difficult question is, with existing stablecoin that's been issued, would there be more competition or there's also complementary?
Sorry, happy to take this. We're not part of Project Ensemble. Obviously, Standard Charter and the team is very deeply involved in that. So I think we're offering a more generalized view here. But even before Web3 digital asset, going forward, there will be stablecoin, licensed stablecoin. Even before all these things exist, there always has been different forms of money. And I think, as far as I can recall, I don't really think there has been a constant debate around why different forms of money need to exist. There are various functions, use cases for various maturity, various types of institutions that might need different forms of money. And I think going forward, that probably will be a similar case, maybe manifest in a different way. So again, I don't necessarily think this is a binary situation where people talk a lot about CBDC, stablecoin, tokenized deposits. Why should I use one or the other? I think over time, as people map out these POCs, initial use case testings, it will be apparent how they could each fit into the broader new monetary system or digital asset ecosystem. But again, there is a market huge enough for a lot of different forms of these assets to coexist. So more general perspective from, observing from outside, yeah.
Don't worry, I know it's sensitive, but I'll throw that to Yam Ki later.
I just want to ask, before we run out of time, I just want to ask one very important question, which is just about Hong Kong regulations specifically and the sandbox. If you guys could just, whoever wants to address this, just talk a little bit about what's needed to comply with Hong Kong specific regulations, because Hong Kong has some specific features that other jurisdictions don't have, and just what's challenging, what's not challenging. Any comments on the specific adapting to the Hong Kong's regulations would be very valuable, I think.
Mm-hmm. He's a journalist.
I mean, look, I think, I think specifically on the regulations, obviously the conclusion of the consultation came out recently. I think that we were quite pleased. It's quite pragmatic. I think I actually quite liked your friendly versus easy. I hadn't heard that before. So I'll probably just use it myself and not give you credit. I'll just say that I thought of that. I'm kidding. But I think, it's friendly, right? It's crypto friendly. I think it's clear. And I think these are kind of, you can build, as long as you know like what the design is or what the rules are, you can build to those things. And I think you can build to success. So I think, us being in the sandbox, one of the big benefits was the opportunity to engage with the regulator so deeply on the regulations. Of course, they're written, and the devil's in the detail, and the actual application and execution will be very key. But from what we've seen so far, I mean, we're quite comfortable, and the fact that we get to continually iterate with the regulator through this sandbox process is extremely valuable for us, no matter how we end up going forward.
But one thing I want to jump in just to get back to your view of the crypto friendly and the crypto easy thing. I think as a legislator, I totally understand your view of we being crypto easy, crypto clear. That's what you mentioned, right? But I think you can look from, as you share from the example from Japan, right? Since the whole industry or the whole digital assets thing is still evolving, we don't know what new product we're going to have. So I think the lessons we learn from places like Japan that you share, you jump in too early, you may position it wrongly that, sometimes you think that's a payment mean, but actually, I don't know, a lot of the crypto product, are they more investment product now instead of payment means? So you frame it wrongly. It takes a long time to actually for legislation to gear back. So what I think is, I would say, not on behalf of the government, but I mean, my view is actually a progressive view, progressive legislation method may be more, suitable when the technology is actually evolving and we don't know what new products kind of come in later. So I guess, I suppose what we're doing is a progressive way of Web3 friendly environment, so that we have legislators that understand, with forum like these, that understand a bit more from the applicant, from the stakeholders, what professionally they're building. And with that system, we do a progressive model, and that we can make it flexible and easy to, add and, reduce some unnecessary part in future. So
yeah, that seems to me also like the most important. Like, it's really hard to get it right on the first time, and that's kind of the whole idea of a sandbox. And again, that's something we're definitely seeing in Japan. 1 year later, people being like, well, maybe this specific rule is a little too much, and it's actually making it harder for people to have a business model. So I'm sure we'll see some of that in Hong Kong. And at least what I'm hearing about Hong Kong is that it's pretty consultative. So that's definitely very important.
Yeah, and the reality is, when it comes to Web3 regulation or stablecoin regulation specifically, there's no one major jurisdiction that's crypto easy, right? It's crypto friendly, at best. So I think, in terms of the consultation conclusion, there are some really good surprises, and there are some, some items that probably people have some view on, like I think, for example, in terms of reserve composition, they also accept tokenized the version of bank deposits and other asset types.
You mean in Hong Kong they don't accept?
In Hong Kong they do,
so
they
do
allow
accept,
this.
okay.
So that's quite interesting. So I think there are some definitely very promising part of the conclusion. Yeah.
Definitely. Okay.
yeah, I think we have to wrap it up for the next panel.
It was super informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you all our moderators and panelists. Now we move to an engaging fireside chat on stablecoin policy around the globe. Join us for an insightful discussion between Honorable Duncan Chiu and Mr. Yam Ki Chan, Vice President for Asia Pacific at Circle. Please welcome our distinguished speakers to the stage.
Okay, Yam Ki, welcome. All right, we talk a lot about stablecoin. Maybe I let Yam Ki give you a minute to actually, introduce Circle. I think most of them, know what Circle is about, but just in case someone new to the industry, I'll let you do an introduction of, kick off with the introduction of Circle, please.
Sure. So, hi, everyone. It's really good to see everyone on a Saturday afternoon after a typhoon. This is truly the most dedicated Web3 community I have seen in a while. So, give yourself a hand. Great. My name is Yam Ki. 大家好，我叫陳 Yam Ki. I'm originally from Hong Kong, but working currently with Circle as the vice president overseeing our Asia business. For those of you who don't know, Circle is a global issuer of stablecoins. We issue USDC, which is a dollar-backed stablecoin. There's around 34 billion in market cap for that. And then there is also the EURC, the Euro stablecoin. Other parts of our business focuses around Web3 technologies, which are really, think of it like AWS for Web2. They are a technical stack unrelated to the issuance of stablecoin, but they're for enterprises that are looking to get on the Web3 rail, the technologies they need to make that transition.
Yep, 34 billion is a huge amount of, in terms of money. And it started in what, 2014, Circle?
So the company started around 2013.
2013,
so
yeah.
It's been 11 years. And the company, the company started actually thinking about the movement of money, the frictionless exchange of value on the internet.
Yeah.
And at the time, our CEO and founder started with the Bitcoin network. And as those of you who follow crypto know, it's actually a really slow network. It's expensive. And that's a way to think about the evolution of Web3 itself. That was version 1. And it wasn't until 2017, 2018 that we had version 2 of version 2 of blockchain, and that was Ethereum. And it was around that time that USDC was started as a digital dollar token on blockchain, and that was possible and much faster and cheaper on that network. And now it's on, USDC is now on 16 different blockchains. So we work across different type of kind of blockchain networks as well.
Yeah, so basically it's only like 6-7 years of, really market penetration between you and Tether, and now the market is like 15,
about
160 billion, right? 160 billion in the market already with daily transactions of, what was the number of daily transactions?
At Circle, we have around 12 trillion, over $12 trillion of on-chain transactions since we've started USDC.
Yeah, so what is it like? I know you like travel every day telling about, what the market is like, and building market penetrations and partners differently. You were in Korea. I see that you give some sharing in Korea for the Korea Blockchain Week. Did you go to Japan for the WebEx?
So for people in Hong Kong, the phrase is Tai Hong Yan.
Yeah.
Literally an astronaut. And I spend a lot of my time on airplanes because this is really a global business. This is not, despite all of the names of just any one location. I spent a lot of time all across Asia, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in Taiwan, in Korea, in Japan, in India, and also travel internationally quite often. So at least a couple times a year, I'm over in Switzerland for a couple of the conferences there, and then of course to the US as well.
So it's interesting. It's exciting working for a company that is expanding globally, and things are happening, every day. That has a different, you talk to people doing different use cases, and having new market partners. What are your views of the whole, stablecoin market?
So I would say that, first of all, this is a market that's developing fairly rapidly. And I think one theme that we've heard at the conversation here today is that this is a market that is getting regulated. Regulatory clarity is coming. I think if 2 years ago, if you were to tell somebody that there will be clear regulation in Europe, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in Japan, and potentially even in the United States, that there will be clear regs on stablecoin, you would be left out of the room. But as of the middle of last year, or middle of this year, we have clear rules in Europe. MiCA had come into force. The stablecoin portion of that is now enforced, and we're the first and only global issue at the moment to be MiCA compliant. We're able to move in Singapore. We are licensed in Singapore under the Payment Services Act as a major payments institution. And then in Japan, beginning of this year, we announced a partnership with SBI and working with the regulators there to enable the movement of USDC in a regulated manner in Japan as well. So there's lots of amazing things that's happening, and I think this will continue. And I'm looking forward to seeing what will come here in Hong Kong, both in the regulatory side, but also on the market development side.
Okay, we're getting right into the topic then. Okay. Definitely, Circle is going for the regulatory mode. I talked to you when, I learned from you about the MiCA legislation regime for the stablecoin, and now Japan is, we just went to Japan. Japan seems like working progressively, in terms of the whole Web3 development, not just in stablecoin. They already have that regime already. So now you guys are also working in Japan, talking to regulatory department, and of course in Singapore. So how do you view, so far, we are running into a sandbox, the stablecoin regime in Hong Kong. What do you think about, our pace and, the framework that we actually introduced now in Hong Kong?
So if I'm totally honest, Hong Kong is a follower in this level at this moment in time. Singapore is the first country in the world that created a framework for digital asset, and they call it digital payment tokens, DPT. But it didn't differentiate stablecoins from other type of virtual assets or digital assets, and that's probably one of the challenges for Singapore. So everyone that's regulated is regulated under the same license, and they don't separate between stablecoins and digital payment token. And we operate in Singapore as a provider of the digital payment tokens. They have announced a framework for stablecoin, which was published in August last year, but it has not yet made it to Parliament in Singapore, and the expectation is that will happen sometime in 2025. Japan, as Emily pointed out, back a couple years ago, passed a law that actually established stablecoin as an electronic payment instrument, EPI. And it's a very clearly defined term, and it essentially allows stablecoins to be used as payments. Any way you can just settle money, you can use an EPI, you can use a stablecoin. And then the FSA, the regulator, came up with regs last June, and now they're in implementation process. Hong Kong only published its consultation on stablecoin specifically right after Christmas last year. I remember I was sitting at the kitchen table with my in-laws, and on December 26th, I'm here reading a 40-page document and writing the summary for it. And I think Hong Kong has a lot of the things that are right. What we see in Hong Kong and what we see in some of the other jurisdictions, there's some consistency. This is not new. And it draws from the 2019 FSB consultation on what a well-regulated stablecoin looks like. There are some clear criteria around how you denominate, what the assets are, segregation of assets, in terms of attestation. So there's transparency of, is the money really there? What does it look like? And then there are rules around what type of assets you hold as well. And these are all very, very important. So I think Hong Kong has the right framework. There are a couple things that are probably requires more time to work out. And like many regulators, the first and foremost focus is on local issue stablecoin, which is correct. This is very important. If someone's going to set up shop here in Hong Kong, the MA should be regulating. If someone's issuing Hong Kong dollar stablecoin, no matter where you're in the world, the MA should have a view on that. So that's absolutely right. What I think the MA needs to also think about, and what would be good for the policymakers to consider, is how do you maintain Hong Kong's role as an international financial hub and ensure that tokens that are well regulated in other jurisdictions have an ability to also move here in Hong Kong, so that it's interoperable. And that way, Hong Kong is not sitting as a silo in its own, but really as playing its role as an integrator and connector with the rest of the region and the rest of the world.
Yeah, so the local issued stablecoin, of course, we're working on the regime on how to regulate it, and the assets, how to segregate it, how to keep the assets and provide the transparency. Of course, that's important. And a good question you raise is the established stablecoin from outside. And we talked last time. I think it's difficult for like Circle that you already have such a big circulation to issue on a different currency, right? Or what if you guys have issued a EU stablecoin? What's that experience brought you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we started with USDC as the first currency, and made a lot of sense because we're headquartered in the US. And we are now issuing USDC not just in the US, but also in Europe as part of MiCA. We had, after USDC was created, we issued Euro as well, EURC. But that was an interesting concept because at the time, Europe didn't have any rules around stablecoin. So we issued it outside of Europe in the US, and the adoption of EURC was much lower than USDC, and you can see it in the difference in market cap. So what we're waiting to see really is now that there are clear rules in Europe, we've onshored EURC. It's now being issued out of our European entity in France. And it's going to be listed in various exchanges and see how that will work in terms of adoption. But I think it's really important to think about, what is the structure that you want to have in your jurisdiction, but then also allow stablecoins that are, again, well regulated in other jurisdictions to be able to come in.
Okay, so letting stablecoin from other jurisdictions to come in. One thing you just mentioned a bit about the Japan's model, right? What the payment EPI legislation regime that they allow sort of like a passport, and they will have local partners. If you work with some local partners, that they will provide a KYC, AML clearance where they have some more clarity of these outside issued stablecoin to be operated in Japan. Is that one way we can think about?
Yeah, so Japan was really innovative as the first country to have clear stablecoin law. It actually came into effect before MiCA did. It's just the implementing regulations didn't come until June of this year. And what they've done in their setup is that there are domestic issue stablecoins as well as foreign issue stablecoin. Domestic issue stablecoins have to be issued either by trust bank in Japan or by fund transfer company. Whereas if you're a foreign issue stablecoin, the licensing is actually on the distributors. So generally these are exchanges, but they can also be payments company that are interacting with the retail public, and that's where the controls are set. And these exchanges or payments company that are getting the license from the FSA have to get approval from the regulator in terms of how they intend to distribute, as well as what stablecoin they're distributing, and ensure that the structure of that stablecoin is equivalent. That's the key term, equivalent to how it would be structured if it was issued in Japan. And then the FSA can make a decision, does that fit the rule? And if so, then it will allow that particular exchange or the payments provider to be able to interact with retail on that stablecoin. So I think what's really innovative there is the fact that they were trying to find that balance of having a local framework for local issuance, but they recognized that so much activity and so much of innovation had started outside of Japan. How do you bring that in, and where do you find control? And they found the control in the distributors that are interacting with retail. And I think this is something that many other regulators can consider as a way to essentially have a way to think of managing the risks, but also supporting innovation in a balanced way.
So that's definitely one thing we're working towards with the stablecoin regime, and also, of course, with the virtual asset OTC regime that is under the consultation right now. So hopefully that will provide more clarity to the stablecoin issued outside of Hong Kong, how they will be traded and purchased, on board, off board in Hong Kong. So apart from that, I see that you give some comments about the US market where you were in Korea Blockchain Week. And can you share with us your thoughts on that report that you did?
Yeah, so I was quoted in one of the press reportings, and it actually touches on a similar topic that Emily had mentioned, which is in the US, there is this undercurrent of conversation around digital assets. It's been brewing for some time. It is not new. Obviously, there's controversies around the enforcement by some of the regulators that has created a lot of consternation in the industry. The Republicans did make it an election issue, and they have taken certain positions. But it's also important to also remind ourselves that the Democrats haven't completely ceded this issue to the Republicans. They have been working behind the scenes on this topic as well. No matter what happens, there will be some movement on digital assets. The way we think about it is that crypto and digital asset is not a red issue or blue issue, it's a purple issue. It's something that has bipartisan support. And this election actually creates an opportunity for a reset in the conversation in the United States.
Yeah, so all these are undercooked. So every country is working on the stablecoins, and actually, with already 160 billion in issuance in just a few years, we see, this is actually what people I would say people have demand. For the need of stablecoin, where cross-border transactions provide transparency, efficiency and stuff. So what do you see in that? You're working every day on promoting, your stable Circle as one of the major players in the market. What do you see in the next 5-10 years? 5-10 years, you think the stablecoin, some people say will, I don't know, take over some of the smaller nations or countries, currency as a mean of global trade, or what are you looking at in 5-10 years?
Well, first of all, I think it's too early to tell. We are in essentially the dial-up stage of Web3. Think of this as we're in the early days of modems for the internet. We're not yet at the broadband stage. We're at the beginning of that adoption, but it's still taking some time. So it's still early. So that's one. The second piece is that we focus a lot of our time on US dollar denominated stablecoin. As you mentioned, there's about 160 billion or so. And that seems like a lot, but there are actually $2 trillion of dollars in the world, of which about half of those are outside the United States. So a dollar stablecoin in its entirety, 158 billion or so, it's still a small portion of the total dollars outstanding in the world. So this is very, very early. And I expect a couple things to happen. One is that as the technology gets better around everyone's usage or getting onto Web3, you need a form of payment. So stablecoins are needed, no matter what form and what denomination. So it's just a part of getting on chain. The second piece is I would absolutely expect to see many different type of stablecoins in different currencies. There's no reason why it's only in dollars. This is a movement that's happening around the world, and especially in Asia, countries are looking at this as a step change in their development curve. Many of the countries around the region had seen what the internet had done in terms of new jobs, new economies that were built, and they were a little late to it, but they got there in the Web 2 and Web 2.5 world. They saw what was happening with some of the larger tech companies, and they started developing in-house tech. That's why in some countries you would not only see Google Pay, but you see Kakao Pay, Line Pay, Alipay, lots of these that's developing around the world. And what other countries are doing is they see this change coming and they want to get ahead of it. They've seen this movie before, and they will start pushing on the Web3 regulation, which is why Japan, here in Hong Kong and Singapore have been doing this. And there will be more stable coins that would also create greater liquidity around FX transactions. It will make it also easier to lower costs for remittances and cross-border payments. And at the end of the day, this is good for the economy, this is good for trade, and it's going to be good for job creation.
Yeah, I got to concur with you that we all see the benefits of having stablecoin around, and I think we will have more stablecoin. I mean, maybe based in different currencies and maybe even other assets class. But what are the challenges, shortfalls you see for the market? Cybersecurity, things that happened before. Of course, stablecoin based on algorithm that that's. I wouldn't say history, but that will need improvement. So what are the challenges, shortfall you see for this market to grow?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up algorithmic type stablecoins. And I think, unfortunately, crypto as a whole has a pretty bad rap, right? And stablecoin in particular has had some challenges. And what the FSB and the BIS have done is actually clarify the different types of stablecoins, because not all stablecoins are created equal. There are algorithmic ones that you mentioned. There are multi-asset backed ones. And then there are the fiat reference one. And what we see is that most of the tier 1 regulators around the world focus on the fiat reference one. It's very clear what is the easiest place to start, easiest to understand, easy to regulate. And that's what I think Hong Kong has. That's what Singapore is trying to set up, and what Japan has. So it's really important to focus on that and make sure that that regime is well structured, and that it will also make it easy to be interoperable, because it's a standard that I think it's becoming more and more prominent.
Okay, we have time for one last question. So if I ask you for an advice for Hong Kong stablecoin regime to be successful, what is one thing that you can think about we should fix? Or I mean, not fix, but we should, have it in the regime?
I think it comes back to first principles, which is Hong Kong as an international financial hub. What does it need to do for Hong Kong to be an international financial hub as the world moves towards Web3? One of those things is interoperability, the ability to allow different well-regulated products to move in the market, and not only for coming in, but also for going out. That's what makes Hong Kong unique, and it's what made Hong Kong unique not only for the last decade, but the past couple centuries, and I hope to see that continue.
Okay, thank you. Please give a round of applause to Yam Ki. Thanks for your sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Duncan Chiu and Mr. Yam Ki Chan. Our next panel tackled a crucial question. Will Hong Kong be a global Web3 hub? Joining us for this discussion by Mr. Du Yu, General Manager from Wanxiang Blockchain Labs, and Mr. Thomas Chiu, Head of Digital Assets and Head of Family Office from China AMC Hong Kong. The conversation will be moderated by Mr. Gary Liu, co-founder and CEO of Terminal 3. Let's welcome our panelists and moderator to the stage.
What's up, kids? All right, good afternoon, everyone. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us, not only on a Saturday, but all the way through to the last panel. All the other panels have been incredibly informative. This is going to be informative and entertaining, right, gentlemen? We're excited to talk about Hong Kong. Now, this is a conversation that has happened probably in every single conference that Hong Kong has had around Web3 or digital assets over the course of the last 2 years. And many of us have traveled around the region, if not around the world, to sit in panels discussing this exact same question over the course of the last 6 to 12 months. Hong Kong, since, as we heard the Undersecretary Joseph Chan mention, since 22 months ago, announcing the new regime towards retail crypto in the city, Hong Kong has become really a shining light on the hill for other jurisdictions and cities that really do believe digital assets are part of our financial future. There's still a lot of work to be done, but the progress in this city is incredibly exciting, and we have 2 experts today to tell us a little bit more about how they view the progress we've made in the last 2 years and what is still to come. But first, I want to ask these 2 gentlemen to introduce themselves just a little bit and their companies as well. So why don't I start right here to my left with Mr. Du Yu, and then we'll go to Tom as well.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you for inviting me here. My name is Du Yu. I'm from Wanxiang Blockchain Labs. So actually, I have been in Web3, also called blockchain, for almost 10 years. I joined Wanxiang in 2015, and being the general manager of Wanxiang Blockchain Labs. So originally from Shanghai, and also kind of expand to the world. We are the very early participant of the Web3 community. So we invest a lot of blockchain protocols such as Ethereum and etc. Actually, we are one of our fund is the early investor of Circle in 2016, and pretty interesting that see a lot of happening during the past 2 years in Hong Kong and people gathering in Hong Kong. And starting from last year, we start to host Hong Kong Web3 Festival. I think the biggest Web3 events in Hong Kong. Try to bring all the communities from different countries, regions, or different aspects all come to Hong Kong. Try to build Hong Kong as a Web3 center. Thank you.
Excellent. Thomas, tell us a little about yourself and also what you're doing with CMA.
Great. Thank you, Duncan, for the invitation today, and glad to be here. My name is Thomas Chiu. I run digital assets and family office at China AMC, Hong Kong. So China AMC is the 2nd largest asset management company in China and also the largest ETF issuers. So I'm coming from a traditional finance background. I used to work at Goldman Sachs in New York, Hong Kong for many years and overseeing a lot of the Web2 companies went public. And entering the Web3 world, I think it's just like IPO, right? We did the IPO for Bitcoin on April 30th. That's a spot ETF for Bitcoin and Ethereum. So the path is very similar. And I do think the DeFi and TradFi and Web2 and Web3 are crossing together. And I think together can, 1 + 1 is bigger than 2.
And my name is Gary. I am the co-founder and CEO of a company called Terminal 3 that is based here in Hong Kong. We are a identity and user data oracle. What we do is we store customer information very securely for companies and allow that to be expressed as identity assets across especially regulated environments like finance. I also chair the Hong Kong Web3 Association. The name is Web3 Harbor. Delighted to be with you guys here. So, let's start with the pitch for Hong Kong. Let's assume that there is an entrepreneur here in this crowd who is thinking about setting up a Web3 or blockchain company in our town. How would each of you, in let's call it 2 minutes or less, convince them that Hong Kong is a place to build a Web3 blockchain company today? Dui, let's start with you.
Yeah, okay, that's a very good question. So I want to first quote what Emily said. When you're starting a Web3 project, you can never ignore Chinese community. So when you say Chinese community, it's kind of Chinese-speaking community, and also from the people, like Chinese people all over the world. It's a huge community. That's the one. And also, when I think I travel a lot from Shanghai to Hong Kong. So I remember one thing I saw at the Hong Kong airport. It said that Hong Kong is the gateway of mainland China to the world. Actually, it's a gateway, it's a two-way gateway, right? So we want to bring people from all over the world to China, to Asia, that's Hong Kong. And also people from mainland China to go outside, that is Hong Kong. So, and also second thing, when I talk to people in France, in US and European, I always say, so one of the competitors for Hong Kong is Singapore. So let's say compare Singapore and Hong Kong. Hong Kong is in the center of Asia. So within 3 hours flight, you can arrive every city in Asia, I would say. But Singapore kind of is too far away from everywhere. So that's the key. And also, as a Web3 developers, you need to, Web3 entrepreneurs, you need to attract more developers, especially for the layer 1, layer 2 projects. See, 15 minutes ago, in Shenzhen, full of greatest developers. So when we say developers, from my personal view, it's only China, US. Because only China, US has a large amount of population with large amount of great universities. And the also important thing is there are large amount of technical company, great technical company like Tencent, like Huawei. So it's a systematic work that to train experts, developers. So if you want to attract talent and developers, definitely Hong Kong. You can attract talents from mainland. And the last thing is the capital. So when you want to fundraising, I think Hong Kong is always the financial center.
We're going to definitely dig in more to this relationship between Hong Kong and mainland China in the blockchain Web3 world in a little bit. And just for the record, I think that Singapore's geographic location may be the kindest indictment of that city that we've heard from Hong Kongers over the course of the last few years. So, Tom, what about you? What would you say to an entrepreneur who is thinking about bringing their business or starting a business here in Hong Kong?
Right. I'm actually the member of the entrepreneurship committee at Cyberport and a Web3 incubation mentor. We just went through the second round of the vetting committee. We actually voted a bunch of Web3 projects. By looking at those projects and talking to those founders, I tell them 4 things. The first one is the legal framework. I think Emily made a great point, same as Duncan, about Hong Kong's regulatory framework. It's probably the well-established among all the other countries and regions. And we have the whole comprehensive legal framework for virtual asset exchanges, to stablecoin, to potentially we're going to have the VAOTC and the custodian. So I think those comprehensive legal framework is the most important thing. That's a foundation. And second is the financial market and the structure. And we know Hong Kong has been the financial center for many years. And we have developed a lot of the professional industry and participants to building the financial framework. Whether you are setting up a fund or setting up a trust or any type of the financial legal framework, Hong Kong has the most effective and efficient way to help you to set that up. So that's a very important, the financial structure. And the third thing is the technology. I think Du Zong mentioned about Shenzhen has the pool of the talents, right? A large population of developers. And the technologies go beyond the developers, but also the innovations, right? We have a lot of great universities in Hong Kong that generate and produce a lot of great ideas. So with those innovations and talents, that comes to the advanced technology. Last but not least, as we're sitting at Cyberport, it's also the supercomputer center in the future, which means it will process and compute a lot of data. So data is the most important thing in the 21st century. And by on-ramp a lot of traditional assets, that's what we call RWA tokenization, we're going to see a bunch of data on-chain. And by having the access to those data and understand the data and invest in the data and trade the data, that's very important. Now, Hong Kong is trying to build the biggest data hub in Asia. So I think with all four of those components, I think Hong Kong is definitely the place for entrepreneurs to set up a business.
Okay, I'm going to take 4 of those components, not just the 4 that Tom was talking about, but mixing together both of your answers, and give you guys the hard task of ranking them in what you believe the importance is for the growth of any Web3 hub. Doesn't have to be Hong Kong, but anywhere in the world. So the 4 I'm going to pick: number 1, access to capital. Okay. Number 2 is regulation and policy. Number 3 is talent. And number 4, I'm going to call it ecosystem, which is really the industries that exist in the city plus the community of entrepreneurs that is already there. So those 4 things, if you can rank them, if you had to stack rank them, how would you rank them? Thomas, I'm going to start with you.
As we're speaking now and about next 10 years, I think regulation is the most important thing. Once you build a business, you don't want it to be shut down by government. We saw the Telegram, right, in France. They have 900 million users, but it could disappear tomorrow. So regulation is definitely the biggest thing. And second, I would say talents, right? Once you have the talents, you have the ideas, you have the products, and eventually the capitals will chase you. So number 3 will be the capital. With regulation, talents, technology, capital, then you can build an ecosystem. So ecosystem is the last.
How much do you disagree with Tom?
Only a little bit. So actually, my first answer is that depends. Depends on the different cities, different regions. Let's take Hong Kong, for example. I think first of all, definite regulation. And second, I would say capital. Third will be talent, and then ecosystem. The reason, a little slight difference is because when you have a bunch of capital here, capital can attract talent. So one thing I saw in US is that a lot of people, so for Web3 developers or entrepreneurs, they used to be in Silicon Valley. But starting from this year, beginning of this year, we see a trend that many of them move to New York City. I think one of the reasons is definitely the regulation, because ETF, because etc. But another reason is capital. So for venture capitals, they are seeking new LPs at New York City. And then for the startups, they want to get fundraising, because venture capitals of Web3 are all in New York City, are moving to New York City. And these entrepreneurs are moved to New York City too. So, yeah.
Let me challenge you a little bit on that point. I would love to believe that capital begets talent, because we know that one thing that Hong Kong does not lack is capital. Now, Hong Kong has had a lot of free-flowing capital and venture capital, private equity capital for decades now. And we have tried for decades to become a technology hub. And yet, we've never built that ecosystem. We've never had the critical mass of talent that allows us to become a Silicon Valley, or even a Denver, or an Austin, or a Tel Aviv. Or we compete against Tokyo and Korea and Singapore now. So what is it that is going to make this round of capital infusion into a technology market different?
It's a very interesting question. So when we say capital, there are many different kinds of capital. So Foresight Ventures, the founder of Foresight Ventures, Mr. Bai, when you saw his slides, where are they based? Singapore and the US, not in Hong Kong, right? So why? Because there are barely, only a very few venture capital in Hong Kong, especially in Web3, right? ETF here, there are a lot of traditional finance center in Hong Kong, but in terms of venture capital, I don't think Hong Kong is a center. But compared to Shenzhen, there are a lot of venture capitals up there. And for Web3 specifically, the Asia Web3 focus of venture capital, as I know, 80% but most of them are based in Singapore, not in Hong Kong. So there are many entrepreneurs willing to move to Singapore, get fundraising, not Hong Kong. I think that's the answer to your question.
Okay, if I were to summarize that a little bit, and I think that's prescient, is that in the past, the development of a technology ecosystem, one that attracts talent from all around the world, required venture capital. And Hong Kong, frankly speaking, as a retail technology marketplace, is just too small. 7 million people is not a big enough marketplace to build for. So venture capital has been lacking. But this round, in the world of Web3, we're talking about much more traditional, like asset management level capital. This type of a capital already exists in Hong Kong, is already free-flowing in Hong Kong, and its investment into digital assets by itself attracts the talent to come build sort of the infrastructure and the base for that technology. Is that kind of what you mean?
I would say for the capital in Hong Kong, probably most of them buy Bitcoins, not invest in startups. I think that's the difference.
Okay, all right. I think we're saying the same thing. This is a world that where the capital goes into digital assets, even if you're holding an asset that is a token, the money that you put in actually ends up in the actual infrastructure and technology development that backs that token and holds the value of that ecosystem. Thomas, let me turn to you. You are actually both of you guys are from a traditional asset background, but you in particular, you are the digital assets expert that remains in the traditional finance ecosystem. Frankly speaking, I personally think that the city needs more people like you because for Hong Kong to be a Web3 hub, we need the traditional financial sector here to better understand crypto. So my question for you is, what is the biggest misconceptions about crypto in the traditional finance industry here in Hong Kong? In other words, what needs to be corrected about the understanding of crypto for Hong Kong's traditional financial sector to really jump in head first?
We speak the same language. I don't think we speak different language. I think it's an assessment of a risk, right? There are different risks involved with on-chain activities, from the custodian to the tokenization and to the trading and to the settlement, right? Those are the traditional assets are in the kind of a enclosed system, right? It's not open chain, it's not a open system. So traditional finance has been used to this kind of ecosystem that is enclosed. So by adding the openness, whether it's permissioned public chain or permissionless blockchain, we have to understand how to open up. I think that is the biggest misconception between the traditional finance and the Web3 or so-called the DeFi world. We are part of the project ensemble and we are working with a lot of the stablecoin issuers. The roles that we're playing is to bring the traditional asset risk assessment and the risk control mechanism to the Web3 products. So we talked about stablecoin last 2 hours. I think the confidence and the trust of the users in the stablecoin is the biggest thing. And the reason they have those doubts is because of the risk behind it. That's why I think Hong Kong is doing a great job to license those custodian, license the exchange, license the OTC, and eventually to license the stablecoin issuers. I think those government regulation, by putting the traditional risk measurement on the Web3 innovations, is critical. And it's the only way for Web3 to grow to the next trillion or 2 trillion size. So I think that's the biggest thing. And the second thing is a lot of the traditional Web3 developers did not come from a framework or a controlled or regulated environment. So they are very innovative, right? They have a lot of great ideas to solve the efficiency problems. But nowadays, they have to think about how to be adaptive and how to put themselves in a more traditional framework. I think we've seen a lot of traditional banks, for example, Standard Charter, right? Alex sitting down there. So it's a tokenization company invested by Standard Charter. I think when we discuss about the tokenization, we're thinking about in the banking environment. I think those are the language, or those are the framework the traditional finance want to hear. I think it will take some time, but Hong Kong, I think, is most advanced in terms of the migration between the two.
Let me pick a little bit at the idea of an open network and the advantages and some of the misconsiderations there. I think generally speaking, when it comes to open networks, especially in decentralized finance, we understand the key opportunities. You're opening up the financial sector and financial access, democratizing, for lack of a better term, finance to a much broader group of people around the world. There's also transparency and trust factors, significantly improved when you're on a distributed ledger. But one thing that we don't talk enough about, I think, in the traditional financial world is the opportunities that come with composability. When you have an asset, like a regulated stablecoin, that you can build on top of, which is very different than traditional fiat, there are so many other opportunities that those who do financial engineering, especially in a city like this, can create. So if I were to ask you, as the traditional finance expert on the stage here, if somebody were to come to you from one of the major banks to say, tell me about composability, tell me what I can do with a composable digital asset, what are some examples you can give to them that gets them excited to say, oh, I see the opportunity now?
I think any investment, you have to adjust the risk and return. And what are you pricing, right? The composability about the underlying asset. Are you pricing the return of the increasing of the asset value, or you are pricing the volatility of the asset, right? So there are many ways you can invest and price the asset. Second is to understand the interoperability, because many of those underlying assets are sitting on different chains. So I think a big task that MA and SFC were working on is, when we talk about the tokenization, how to do the interoperability between different blockchains. We can't force all the assets to be on one chain, right? Same as Foresight Ventures, they invest in many layer 2 and layer 1 blockchains. So there are many assets on different chains, so the interoperability. And the last thing is about the decision, right? We talk about DAO, right? DAO is a decentralized decision. I'm working on my doctoral thesis is on DAO. We interviewed 30 founders, and we're going to work with Animoca to interview more. After doing those 30 limited surveys, I found there's no decentralized decision making. It's all centralized, right? So, some of you guys are laughing, right? So who is making that centralized decision? You want that decision to be made by logical and reasonable group of people that is complying the local regulation. So there are many things involved in a product, I would say. So to think about in Web3, but use the Web2 to do things, I think it will give you further achievement, yeah.
Dewey, I'm going to come back to you on the mainland China to Hong Kong Connect question. Now, this is, for Wanxiang, very critical to not only your business, not only the story of the company, but to your vision for Hong Kong. In fact, as you mentioned, Web3 Festival this year was the second edition, and we expect that it's going to be a third and fourth and many more. One of the key characteristics of the Web3 Festival during April timeframe in Hong Kong is that it is a massive opportunity for the mainland Chinese builders, entrepreneurs, to come to Hong Kong and engage directly with the global Web3 ecosystem. I know that you guys build Web3 Festival as a truly international festival, but it is unique in that it is very mainland heavy, and I think that is a positive thing for Hong Kong. Can you tell us a little bit more about the vision of that connection? What are the points of connection that you think matter the most between Hong Kong and mainland China, and why does that benefit the blockchain and Web3 world?
Yeah, just as Emily said, you cannot ignore Chinese community. And also, actually before, many years ago, Shanghai and China is the center of Web3, so-called blockchain at that time of Asia. So when I was in Shanghai, people from US or Europe all coming to Shanghai, not to Singapore, not to Hong Kong at that time, because technology is there and also talent is there, capital is there. And then after, because of the regulation in mainland China, there are so many people are moving out of mainland China to all over the world, Hong Kong, Singapore, etc. And I think people, one interesting last year when we host the first Web3 festival in Hong Kong is that, because of COVID, many old friends haven't seen each other for like 3 or 4 years. And then someone said that it's really good to be back, kind of back to Hong Kong, back to home. That is a very interesting thing. And also, for mainland China, I always thinking technology. So it's kind of a, let's put another way. So for the young people in mainland China, they are seeking for new opportunities, especially on the current situation. It's really hard to kind of find a good job. Economy is going down. And Web3 definitely is the next opportunity for the younger generation, for the young generation. So we provide the opportunity to let them know what is happening globally in Web3, and then get to know what is the latest technology and like latest news about Web3. I think it's a good way for them to actually come to Hong Kong and learn about the world. And also from another side, for the layer 1, layer 2 protocols, they want talent. So as I mentioned, China has the largest population developers, especially like from Shenzhen, it's pretty near from here. So I always consider Hong Kong as a gateway, not only for like mainland China to the rest of the world, but also a gateway or hub of Asia. So for Web3 Festival, we attract attendees, not only from mainland China, but also from the countries and regions around Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and Thailand, Southeast Asia. There are a lot of people gathering together. That is valuable. And also I mentioned Hong Kong is the center. And also like Hong Kong is the gateway to the Western world.
Yeah, my observation from attending the last 2 Web3 festivals held by Wanxiang and Hashkey, there is an incredible amount of innovation on the application layer in mainland China that we don't see in the West. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that for global Web3, we're still in the process of setting standards. We're arguing which layer 1 matters for settlement. We're arguing whether or not there are too many layer 2s for scaling solutions. But in mainland China, they're not arguing about that. They have a couple of blockchain networks that they're able to build on. They don't worry about speculation of crypto prices. They're not worrying about your tokenomics and designing tokenomics for short-term return versus long-term infrastructure investment. They're just building. And because of that, the speed of innovation on the application layer within mainland China has been extraordinary. And that's been really heartening, I think, for us to witness here in Hong Kong. And then to imagine what it would look like to export that technology and that application layer to the rest of the world. The next question is going to be a little bit cavalier. I'm just going to throw it out there for the 2 of you guys to answer. Is the real-world asset tokenization marketplace real?
Alex? Well, I'm actually finishing up a book with Professor Wang Yang on RWA. I think it's real because if you look at a stablecoin, 160 billion US dollars, and it's growing. It's a tokenization of US dollar and short-term US treasuries. And if you look at the tokenized money market fund, it's been growing. But if you look at other non-standardized products, real estate, arts, carbon credits, things like that, it's not growing. I think it's not because of the asset. I think it's because of a standardization and the interoperability. Many of those products being trading on enclosed systems or exchanges that is not open, right? So that's a whole discussion about the openness. If we look at the traditional futures, if you trade gold or coffee beans or soybeans or pork, those are on Pacific exchanges globally. They are not connected with each other. If you want to trade RME or CME or Shanghai or mainland China futures market, they are not connected. So if in the future, those exchanges can be connected by blockchain, I think we will create a 24/7 non-stop trading for real-world asset. However, I do think there are some ideas may not realize, right? Some interesting ideas of tokenize some non-standardized products will not get enough investors, capitals, because of the underlying asset itself doesn't have a lot of value. It's not a yield product, or it's not a product that can be speculated. So I think a real-world asset tokenization is real. Depends on the underlying assets.
Yeah. I want to add a little more from different angles. So I'm a tech guy, and not always talking about like finance or securities. So when we say RWA, I think many people always think about securities, tokenization, securities. I want to bring another angle is that, beginning of this year, we wrote an article so-called DePIN-based RWA. So when we say real-world assets...
DePIN, by the way, stands for Decentralized Infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you. And so when we say tokenization of real-world assets, not only the real-world, the physical assets or the securities, but also the usage of new kind of resources like computing power, like storage, like the new energy. That could be a new way of like tokenization of usage, like Ethereum. When you hold Ether, what's the value of Ether? It means the user is used to pay the gas of using Ethereum, like smart contract. So when there's another way of tokenization of real assets that is that tokenize of these like computing power assets. That's another type of assets, I would say.
I'm just looking up the current FDV, fully diluted valuation for a token called Filecoin, which I consider to be one of the great, before even DePIN, decentralized physical infrastructure, became a term in the last like 12 months. Filecoin is an organization that services decentralized data storage. So imagine AWS, but not owned by a single company, but by thousands, tens of thousands of different server owners around the world, which means that you're not reliant on a single company with single points of risk to store all of your most important data. And Filecoin right now is at $6.6 billion in fully diluted value. It's a relatively old DePIN project, one of the earliest ones, and I don't think that it's anywhere near, this is not trading advice, but I think that decentralized storage infrastructure is nowhere near scale yet. And so this is already a massive market, just a single use case.
And also computing power. Right,
that's even, that's 100 times larger than data storage.
Right,
yeah.
But still take time.
Okay, let's talk about other jurisdictions really briefly. Emily, I've seen her present this so many times, and every time it gets even more elegant and more concise and more precise about the differences between the multiple major jurisdictions in Asia. We oftentimes here in Hong Kong, we're very proud of what's going on in Hong Kong, but the reality is that as entrepreneurs, we have to pay attention to other marketplaces. I know, Duncan, you don't want to hear this, but there are other marketplaces out there. So I'm going to ask both of you guys, starting with Duyu, what other jurisdictions are actually interesting right now, and for what reasons are they interesting to Web3 and blockchain companies?
In Asia, right?
Doesn't have to be in Asia.
Okay. I think one of the things we need to take care of curious about is Japan. So Emily told a lot of things in Japan, and Japan is so I want to bring a little back. So what's the definition of Web3 hub, right? So and then I think currently we need to take care about not only regulations but also the living. So not only take care about talking about the things we are talking about like regulation, talent, and also like capital, etc. But also there is a work and life balance, right? So personally, I don't like Singapore; it's too hot over there. So that's one of the key reasons. But many people moving to Singapore is all about education over their kids. So they move to Singapore only because of that. So I see a lot of people like travel a lot from Singapore and Hong Kong, work in Hong Kong, and their home is in Singapore. And also I see a lot of entrepreneurs are moving to Japan because living costs are much lower than in Singapore and Hong Kong, and the weather is better and the food is good. That's a very important thing to really to thinking about.
Tom?
Yeah, I think this year is the biggest year for Web3 industries because of the two ETFs, one in the US, another one in Hong Kong. I think the Web3 hub in the future will be same as the traditional finance hub. Some people may disagree. There are different parts in the world that have very friendly policies, but I don't think that can scale. I was in San Francisco during OpenAI conference last November. I saw a lot of people building great things. However, I think for Bay Area, San Francisco is more AI driven. I think New York, because of the Wall Street's interest in the Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF, I think a lot of capital definitely start flowing there and then building projects there. Hong Kong, Singapore, I think they have their own advantages for different reasons on the regulatory environment and also the policy environment. Korea, I was there for a whole week, early July, met a lot of crypto people, but they have their own ecosystem. I don't think that's quite open to many other foreigners. Japan is very interesting to watch next, but again, Emily said about the tax. So I think Hong Kong and if you name the city, I would say Hong Kong and New York. And if you worry about tax, I think probably Florida. I think a lot of people there. I think Trump is building a big team there on cryptos. Yeah, that's my thought.
I'm going to ask one last question and then a final thought before we wrap. Here's the last question. We've talked about a lot of reasons why Hong Kong can succeed as a global Web3 hub. What is the biggest risk to that? What is the one mistake that we can make here in Hong Kong to have all of this, the leadership position that we're in right now, the opportunities that we have in the future, all of it go away? Dui, I'll start with you.
I want to use Emily's term, crypto friendly, but not crypto easy. So we're talking about stablecoins all day. And what if you issue a lot of like Hong Kong-based stablecoins and nobody uses them, and people moving to Singapore and other countries, and also crypto exchanges, example too. It's really hard to do business, crypto business in Hong Kong. Then if it's easier in Japan and then or Singapore, why not we move to other countries? I think that is really I think Hong Kong is talking about too much about risk.
So crypto easy in your mind. So because what Emily suggested was that crypto clear matters a lot, which as an entrepreneur, I 100% agree with. But crypto friendly, crypto easy, not the same thing. What you're suggesting that crypto easy still does matter.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's too hard right now in Hong Kong.
To open a bank account, to even if you get a deemed license, to make that into an actual license.
Yeah, and also
to build a business that makes money.
Especially when you open a new company in Hong Kong, it's easy to register a company, but it's hard to get bank account. And also for foreigner to open a company in Hong Kong, it's really hard to get a working permit at the very beginning.
This is why technology lawmakers doing this. Tom, what about you?
I think a lot of people are very crucial to Hong Kong's development. I think Hong Kong has been doing a great job with people like Duncan and Undersecretary Chan. They are all big supporters to Web3. But we have to take baby steps. We don't want to have the Terra Luna situation. We don't want to have the FTX situation because a lot of people lost a lot of money based on that. I think the steps we're taking are solid, and we're not taking a step back. That's very important. We're involved in many projects and sandboxes. I think every day we're making progress. Of course, to outsiders, you don't see that. But behind the scene, we're making a lot of efforts. And especially for Cyberport, right? They are a government-owned entity, but they are promoting Web3 events, such as today. So we should appreciate what Hong Kong has been giving us for Web3 openness and crypto-friendly.
One final reflection. The question for this panel is, will Hong Kong be a global Web3 hub? And I'm glad that it's titled will, not is. Because I've always made the point, even though I'm incredibly bullish about the future of Hong Kong and Web3, that Hong Kong is not yet that we have not yet earned the title of global Web3 hub, and not even Asia Web3 hub yet. But I think we're on our way. So the question, or the observation, or the reflection, I should say, for both of you, and I will also answer this after you guys do, is what is that trigger? What is that moment? What happens that where you individually become comfortable to say, yep, Hong Kong is now the Asia Web3 hub, or even the global Web3 hub?
So my answer is Hong Kong now is the Asia Web3 hub.
Okay, excellent. Do you want to go a little bit further? How then do we go from, in your mind, the Asia Web3 hub to the global Web3 hub? Or maybe it doesn't even matter to you.
Yeah, so I think back to the question, what is the definition of Web3 hub? I think from my understanding, from two ways. One is from the financial sector. So we have the regulation. We have a lot of license issue already, and we want to get more capital to Hong Kong, and also definitely venture capital to Hong Kong. I think that is the major there. How many crypto assets we attract in Hong Kong? And the second is how many startups, how many entrepreneurs are working or set up companies in Hong Kong. So probably they're like managing their C-level working in Hong Kong, but with their R&D in Shenzhen. That is, I think that counts. And then it's kind of I think Hong Kong is not only itself, it combined with Shenzhen or many other like mainland cities together, then combine, make Hong Kong the Web3 center globally.
All right, Thomas.
I think there is a trend of anti-globalization, and we're going to see that in next 10 years or 20 years. So become a global Web3 hub. It's a recognition from foreigners. But for Hong Kong itself, I think it's already at least a regional hub. I think, Duncan, we spoke a few weeks ago about next 12 to 18 months. We're going to see a lot of license to be published, and a lot of people can apply once they fit into that framework. I think after that 18 months period, we're going to see a very comprehensive Web3 framework customized in Hong Kong, but welcomed by global entrepreneurship. But never expect anything that is global nowadays because of the geopolitical tensions. So as long as Hong Kong is doing a great job by itself, taking its own step, and building its own framework, I think talents, capital, and entrepreneurs will come to Hong Kong.
Duncan, we need to put these two in an Invest Hong Kong commercial for the world. My final reflection on this is that I actually believe if Hong Kong were to become, in my opinion, the Asia Web3 hub, it will be the global Web3 hub, because I think what really matters in not only the innovation, but the adoption of digital assets and the decentralized economy is going to come out of this part of the world and not the West. I think we still have some steps to take as a city. I think we have to get to a point where when we travel around, we don't have to convince people to come visit us. We don't have to give them reasons why Singapore is not the place to go, like it's too far from everything and too hot. We don't have to answer the question, hey, why did Token leave Hong Kong and go somewhere else? That these things are not only known, but it's because the entrepreneurs and the companies that are surrounding us, including both of yours, have made the type of impact that naturally attracts magnetic, world-class talent to the city without necessarily us having to tell the story. So I think we're close. I think we're on the path. And I'm excited about the future of this city with Web3. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please give our panelists a huge round of applause? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, our panelists and moderator. As we conclude Web3 Connect Hong Kong and the world, thank you to all of our speakers, guests, and attendees for your valuable contribution. We hope this event has provided useful insight into digital assets regulations and Hong Kong's role in the Web3 landscape. The venue is available until 6 p.m., so please feel free to do connecting here. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you at future Cyberport events.